Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube. And the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the world of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Hey, good evening, everyone. Is everyone trying to stay warm? Hopefully you are staying warm, or trying to at least. It is freezing here at my place. But welcome to my home. Welcome to the office. Welcome to Table Talk. I'm Heath. I'll be your host. And tonight we are continuing our series on the Star Trek movies. And we are now bridging the gap between the original crew and the next generation. We're doing something that we've never tried to do before, and that's do two movies in one night, but we think we can do it. We'll just have to see. Who knows? With me to talk about this is Doug Burton. Welcome.
Hey, what's happening, everybody?
Good to see you.
Yeah, two movies. It's a tall order, but I don't think either one of these movies quite has the depth of something like a Star Trek 6 or 2 or 3 even. So I think we'll go through it a little bit quicker than we're used to.
That's what I was thinking, and that's what I was thinking when I said we could put these two together, because they don't have the amount of depth. I don't have the amount of emotional attachment to these. I don't know that I would want to spend an entire 5 hours talking about Generations. And I'm a bit. I know that First Contact is widely regarded as the best of the Next Generation movies. I know a lot of people just like that movie, and but I've always been rather down on Star Trek First Contact myself.
Oh, see,
did I say Generations? I meant First Contact. that First
Okay.
Contact is widely regarded as one of the best. But I've always been kind of down on that as well. I understand why people like it from an action movie perspective, but so
Yeah, I liked First Contact. I have watched it multiple times. I'm fairly familiar with it. However, it's been a while since I've watched First Contact. Generations, I have not seen that since 1994. I saw it when it came out. I was like, what the hell is this? I did not like the way it ended, the way they treated Kirk at the end. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done with Generations. And then I watched it again for this stream, and it was very interesting because there were scenes that were all jumbled up in my head that I forgot where they came from. And I assumed a lot of these scenes came from a certain episode from The Next Generation or something. And so when I was rewatching this, I was like, oh, that's from this movie. So it was interesting kind of reconnecting and re-understanding Generations, what the story was, what it is. And then I still had to ask the same question, but why?
why? Yeah, we're talking about that. Yes. That's yes. You want to introduce yourself before we go any further, Doug?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I actually was I realized that I am introduced in the countdown as the author of Faraway Bird. It's a historical fiction novel about Byzantine Empress Theodora. I am currently working on the sequel to this book. And while writing it, I ran into some structural issues that I could not get over based on trying to graft this onto the hero's journey, or I should say, use the hero's journey to help organize the story. And I couldn't get over it. So I ended up restudying story structure, and I came up with the Heroine's Labyrinth, which is an alternative to the hero's journey. I'm still a fan of the hero's journey, still an advocate for it, but the Heroine's Labyrinth is an alternative model based on my studies of heroic women in fiction. So, and that book comes out next month. God, we're so close.
So yeah, we're celebrating here on Table Talk. We've got a bunch of different topics about feminine heroes and women in storytelling, female characters that are going to be coming out over the next, a few weeks in order to promote the release of the Heroine's Labyrinth. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. We are also going to be talking about, part of that is talking about Faraway Bird. So we were trying to come up with a guest on Tuesday, and I don't think we've been able, this next Tuesday, a week from tonight, we were going to have a guest next Tuesday, but I don't think we've been able to connect with that guest. So we were thinking we should go ahead and move up Faraway Bird and talk about Faraway Bird next Tuesday. So if you want to have read it, or go through the audiobook. I'm going to go through the audiobook because Doug also created like custom music, or had commissioned custom music, right? And a whole bunch of stuff for the production of the audiobooks. If you're into audiobooks, you can get that. And I'm pretty sure right now that it'll be a week from tonight that we talk about Faraway Bird. So, Daniel says he's looking forward to that one. I
am not biased at all, but this book is great.
Brianna agrees. Brianna's been reading. I've been seeing the text messages in the group text because Brianna's also been saying, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this book. She's been devouring it. She got started just a few days ago and has just been devouring it. So
yeah, she's on, last I checked last night, she was on chapter 34. And to be perfectly honest, having Brianna, say such positive things is like an honor. I feel very honored that she has liked this, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. But for everyone in the chat, I obviously strongly encourage everyone to read it. I will say that I poured my heart into this book. I have never done so much research in my life in order to get every single detail correct. I read, every part of this, every chapter is not only heavily researched, it does not feel like I am telling you a history story. This is completely character driven. And it won't even feel like these events are trying to follow history. It will feel like you are watching a story that is progressing on its own based on the characters. And yet, if you look anything up, you'll see that it all matches up with the history as well. So I would love to be able to share this with everybody. And also, this book sets up almost every chapter. Not only develops the plot of this book as it goes, it sets things up in the books to come too. So there's a lot going on in Faraway Bird.
All right. So over here, I have been working on getting our virtual coffee shop together, and I'm ready for a test for that. That's our board gaming coffee shop. We can do online virtual gaming with each other here as part of the community. And I was going to do the test this weekend, but I think I'm going out to Neutral Zone Studios this weekend. So
Awesome.
The test for that will have to be the weekend after that. Everything ends up falling on the same weekend. So in about a week and a half, we'll do a test on that. But then now that I've got basically all that set up, I'm turning the Battleship to promote The Cultists, a complete relaunch. The Cultists is my show that I created, my web show. Brianna is the co-writer and the director of the show. So also Brianna is on it. So if you are not on the Cultist YouTube channel, please do come over and check it out and subscribe. We've got 3 episodes that are already up. Each episode's only between like 6 and 8 minutes. We got the first 3 episodes up. We've shot 2 seasons. We're going to be bringing out a bunch more stuff. So really, the Cultist YouTube channel is the place to be right now.
That's awesome.
We start to launch. So we got the Heroine's Labyrinth coming out, and then we're gonna after we do all of our stuff about the Heroine's Labyrinth when it comes out, then we'll be all about stuff coming out for the Cultists. So we're people who do stuff around here. We're promoting things are coming out on. We don't just sit here and gripe about movies. We all do this because we are doers. And
also, in fact, I think most, even a lot of people in the chat, the place from where all the criticism comes from of a movie, good or bad, comes from a place of love. We're not just here to tear stuff apart. If we do tear something apart, it's because we learned from it, and then take what we learned and use it in our own work. And I know a lot of people in the chat are working on projects as well. And I got you, James.
Also, we're broadcasting on multiple different places right now, but we are closing in on getting enough watch. We need like 300 more watch hours on Table Talk, the dedicated Table Talk channel, in order to be able to do like super chats on the Table Talk channel and do membership. I don't know what we're doing, but in order to get to the place where we can at least do super chats, we need 300 more watch hours on the Table Talk channel. So if you are watching on Heath's Geekverse, once we get to the threshold, then Table Talk will really be flying on its own. I'm not going to stream to the Heath's Geekverse as well. But if you are watching someplace else, we would really appreciate the watch hours over on the dedicated Table Talk channel and help us go ahead and meet that watch threshold.
We are almost there.
We are almost there. So, all right, we got a great crew tonight. I see lots of people over here. James, we got James and Zero the Blade and Sherry. BGD has been looking forward to these, I know. Sable is here. Wild Barley is here. Good evening, Wild Barley. Wild Barley and I were chatting about this by text message as I was rewatching them this afternoon. So, all right. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
So, Generations.
Yeah, just to go back to our part 3 of Star Trek 6, I almost wish we could play the clip where we discussed how Star Trek 6 ended, how perfect it was. They signed off on, every actor signed off as it went into the credits. The music was perfect. It was like saying goodbye. Star Trek 6 stuck the landing. They took the disaster that was Star Trek 5 and they brought the Phoenix rose from the ashes to make Star Trek 6. They gave this last great performance and they restored Spock. Everything was perfect. They signed off and then someone gave us Generations.
And then they decided to spoil that. And it does. It spoils that. And that was actually one of the first things I was going to say in the idea of what was going on here in the context of this movie's creation. And this movie was coming off of 2 big wins. This movie was coming off of 2 big wins. The first one is the end of Star Trek 6, which perfectly closed out the original crew.
Yep.
And it's coming off of All Good Things, which is the final episode of The Next Generation, which is nearly universally beloved. Now, I can go and we can nitpick some things actually about the plot that actually don't make a whole lot of sense. But overall, it seems like that ending to that TV show, talking about also sticking the landing, it seems like most everyone thought that season finale or a series finale stuck the landing and gave us a good out. Now, whether or not the Next Generation should have ended there or they should have continued going on to more TV, some people are like, no, they definitely should have cut it because the episodes, some of them, maybe their stories weren't as good anymore, something like that, but they were still going. But the decision was made that we want to turn this into a movie franchise. So from at the higher levels, that okay, we got to do movies. We did movies with the original crew. You knew movies were coming with this, with the new crew. They decided to go ahead and make that happen, but they stuck the landing with the end of the TV show, and then we went right into this movie.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you're exactly right. 1994, the big bow from the Next Generation, which was a completely successful relaunch and revitalization of the Star Trek brand. I remember when it came out in the late 80s, there was a lot of debate that you can't put a whole new crew out there, that Star Trek should, there was a debate at the time, is this a good idea? Is this any good? The answer was decisively yes. The Next Generation was excellent. Jean-Luc Picard cemented himself in the Star Trek lore, became the next great captain. And then the rest of the crew, all likable characters in the Next Generation. So yes, that took a bow. The original crew took their bow 3 years ago. Like Deep Space Nine came out the year before in 1993. So Deep Space Nine just launched as a,
Deep Space Nine was coming out. I forgot about that in that context. So that was carrying on the TV. And
Correct.
That's why they were like, okay, now the Next Generation crew can go to its new movie phase, go to a movie franchise.
Right. So Star Trek was kind of running hot. The old crew, landed. They did their thing with the original series in the 60s, and then the launch of the movie franchise in the 80s, and then 1991. They did their thing. Next Generation did their thing. There's a new spinoff, Deep Space Nine, which, by the way, James, I have been watching. I'm at the end of season 1. With the holidays coming in, I got thrown off a little bit, but I fully intend to continue watching. I'm loving Deep Space Nine, by the way. I would watch at least one episode a night. It is excellent. I like the captain. I like this crew. I like the scenario that they've set up since they got away from the exploration ship. This is a stationary space station at the end of a
Stationary
wormhole.
Station.
Yeah. Well, at the end of a wormhole.
Very stationary.
It's not moving very much. But they came up with a new model for what you could do with Star Trek, where the scenarios would change based on what comes out of this wormhole. Brilliant. And 1994 is 1 year before the launch of Star Trek Voyager. So this is right in the middle of a lot of change in Star Trek. And and they blew the movie, in my opinion. I don't think Generations did much. I even developed the theory while watching it because it was so low budget and so goofy that I almost wondered if they had the plan to film a movie for the Next Generation and it was going terrible, and someone wrote in James Kirk as a solution to fill time because he's heavily involved in the first 20, 15 minutes.
It's a slow burn movie. Like, the first 20 minutes, we get all that. And then we bring him back for a long time at the end.
Right. The whole Star Trek, the whole Kirk plot line is not needed through the core of the film. And then he shows up at the end in a log cabin. So they must, the sets, so low budget. It was so in fact, Kirk was likable. William Shatner was very likable in this.
Well, he was. Yes.
Generations. So I thought to myself, this is a total waste of these two great actors. Jean-Luc is good in this. Patrick Stewart is good in his acting. William Shatner is likable. So you have the horses. They just tied it to a shoebox and said, "Giddy up!" Just nothing of a story. And let me ask you, Heath, why? Why you have Kirk from one era, and then Picard? I think it's an 80-year time span, right?
Right. Yeah. We know that when they were writing Star Trek 6, that one the writers were saying that an original idea was that he wanted the old crew to pass the Enterprise off to the new crew, that he wanted to have that connection, and then realized, oh, it's 80 years of difference, that can't happen. So that idea was scrapped. I'm not sure if that the genesis of this idea came from that, the idea that, hey, we had that idea in Star Trek 6 that we should actually have a bridge, and it didn't happen. Let's do it now.
Yeah,
but it's unnecessary. Oh, hey, Positive Fandom. Good evening. Good evening. It is unnecessary. It's an unnecessary thing to do, particularly having written off or closed out with Star Trek 6 so strongly. It's completely unnecessary to have Kirk and Picard meet. It's completely unnecessary. And that was like the billing of this movie. Oh, that Kirk and Picard are going to meet. Well, no, there were two things. Because I remember, of course, I went to see this movie in the theater with one of my best friends at the time, who was also a Star Trek fan, loved Next Generation. We talked about it all the time, watched all the shows together. And so I remember that he and I were going to get to go see this movie together. Like our parents were like my mom. I think my mom took us or something like that. Because it was Star Trek movies. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
I remember it being billed as, okay, Kirk and Picard are going to meet and the Enterprise D is going to be destroyed.
Yeah,
it was like you were going to see this movie to see the Enterprise D be destroyed. Those are the two things that I remember about.
100%.
Kirk and Spock are going to meet. Enterprise is going to be destroyed.
100%. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. It was like they had a desire for one generation to hand the Enterprise off to the next generation, and they're like, wait, but this is Enterprise B. And they're like, well, why don't we hand it off to B and then just jump ahead to D and we'll hand it off anyway? And it's like, no. Just scrap the idea.
The handoff is on the B anyway, right? I mean, that was kind of, so it doesn't, it fails at that. I mean, it fails at that. Well, I was also going to say, as far as the dates go, we were looking at this. As I was doing some research for this, somebody said on YouTube, and I was like, really, is that really the case? But I guess it is, looking at these dates, that filming of Star Trek Generations began 10 days after the end of the Next Generation. So,
I believe it.
From the timing of that's like, okay, guys, we're going to a movie franchise, and they just rammed right into it. And there was a complete lack of thought in what the Next Generation movies were supposed to be. It suffers from this earlier than the Star Wars sequels did, that they didn't coherently think about what they were going to do. Because we know, and they knew, that some of the best Star Trek movies were the ones that flow into one another and are telling at least weaving together the story. What is this going to cross? Having great themes to them. And this one, we can talk about that. I'm not sure what these movies are about, like, as far as our theme goes and stuff like that.
Well, one of my notes is, the Nexus is like a drug, right? You go in there, you don't ever want to come out. And then when you find out that when they go in there, they go to some part of their past that's so comforting, like a nice little security blanket, that they never want to come out. And I'm like, in a weird way, they already passed this test with Cybok, right? They had to deal with something painful in their past and move past it, or not. According to Cybok, once you deal with your pain, you're over it. You're in this blissful state. And it's like, here's the Nexus, a blissful state again. I was like, we already kind of did this. I don't need to watch these characters rehash flashback style scenarios in their lives to grapple with something that could have been, or, pulling the plug on their dad in the euthanasia situation with Bones. We did that. And it wasn't even good. I'm sorry, let me take this back. Star Trek 5 wasn't good, but those scenes were actually good in a bad movie. We already did this. So to me, I didn't even really buy the theme that this was important enough to write a script about, to bring all these people together, and to waste our time with all of this. If anything, what they should have done, since Voyager was on deck, they should have had Kirk handing off the ship to Enterprise B, to the Enterprise B crew, and then have the Enterprise B be a new series. That's what they should have done. Leave Picard out of it. Not that I don't like Picard, but they don't touch. Their generations are too far apart. It doesn't work. You got to get over that. So I think they should have had Kirk handed off, and even you could have even brought in the whole crew. They just had Scotty, they just had Chekhov. Bring in the whole crew, spend a couple minutes like you did, hand it off to B, make the movie about the new generation and Enterprise B, and then launch a TV series with
but they didn't want to come back. William Shatner came back, and we said he did do a good job in here, but Spock was supposed to be in this movie, and McCoy was supposed to be in this movie. And like the lines that Scotty says, if you rewatch at the beginning on the bridge of the B, all of Scotty's lines are supposed to be McCoy's lines.
Oh yeah, like why are you getting out of your chair? Is there something wrong with your chair?
Something wrong with your chair. That's classic Bones. That's exactly what Bones would say. So it's very obvious. But Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley made the right decision. Like we left the characters in the perfect space. There's no reason for us to return. And
well,
so
what I'm suggesting is the mistake that this movie makes is trying to integrate Kirk into the plot. What I'm saying is have the crew there, the full crew, but not be a part of the main plot. Have the sign off, have a, hey, you're welcome aboard Enterprise B. It's a big job. Here's some advice for you from one generation to the next. Have, just have them say goodbye to the next and then clear out and then move on with this movie with the new crew. And by the way, how crazy is this crew on Enterprise B? You got Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You got Vasquez on comms, and then you've got Sulu's daughter. I thought about it. I was like, this is pretty wild crew. I almost would stick around to see what these guys would do if they were under pressure. Now, Cameron, they portrayed him as kind of indecisive and ineffective, which I hate when they overdo it because it's like, how did this guy get picked to be a captain at all?
Anyway.
Exactly. So, but I would have loved to follow this crew around and just see what they would have done. But yeah, Vasquez, I mean, dude, you've got Vasquez on comms, communications. So yeah, I mean, she's the real deal right there. Now, what did you think about the bridge to Enterprise B? I know that you have kind of an eye for this.
I know. I do like the bridge the Excelsior bridge, the Enterprise B bridge. I like. It's good because it harkens back to the bridges, the style of the bridges that I like anyway, which are the Star Trek movie bridges, especially Star Trek 6 and Star Trek 2 and that kind of stuff. But so I like that better than the D bridge.
I did like. What'd you say?
Better than the D bridge.
Oh yeah. I did like the footage of Enterprise B because here we finally get to see the Enterprise as in the Excelsior model. So it was cool to see that. It was cool to see a new group of people in the maroon uniforms, especially like I said, actors I recognized. I thought it was actually a decent idea to have Sulu's daughter, be part of this. So anyway, there was some cool stuff, in that sense, but it was so cliche that within seconds of them being on the bridge, an emergency, we're the only ship in the quadrant. I was like, again, like Starfleet, build more ships. Do something.
Yeah, because we have done, especially a ship that's not equipped out of and has to be thrown back in several times.
You know what? Everything would be delivered Tuesday. That's stupid.
I was going to say, at least I was going to give you the dates too. Before we go on, I was just going to say that because this was such a transition right from TV into movies. I had forgotten how close they came out. All Good Things aired May 23rd of 1994.
May 23rd. Okay.
This movie came out November 18th, 1994. So it's only a few months later that all of a sudden you are thrown into Generations. And I was thinking about that that's why they must have started the production immediately. Because you can think about the difference between how long it had been from the end of the original movie, TV, to bring them into film. And so you have a lot more, they had a lot more ability to redesign things, rethink things. We're moving we're moving forward in time. We get to completely set something up new. This is supposed to be like an immediate continuation.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, so it hurts. First of all, it hurts because, I know James is like saying, I've starred several different people's comments up here to bring up, but yeah, we need to do we need a movie. We're going to do basically a long Next Generation episode or whatever. We're going to put this on here. And so you still have a lot of TV elements
Totally
in Generations that come over. And I don't think it works because, okay, you've got the new lighting, you've got the dramatic dark lighting on the Enterprise D that makes it feel weird that you're on the Enterprise D. Now, the bridge of the Enterprise D, they reset the bridge. They do more stuff to the bridge of the Enterprise D in this. This is one of the best Enterprise D bridge variants that's out there. I think second only to yesterday's Enterprise D bridge variant. That was a great bridge variant. This one is probably my favorite version of the Enterprise D bridge because they've got more command like controls. I mean, the Enterprise D bridge, I know BGD said blasphemy. The Enterprise D bridge is a work of art, but it's very open. It's very spacious and luxury, but they were able to add because they can have extras manning the extra posts and things like that make it look more like the command center of a Galaxy class starship. Yeah, those extra side consoles are nice. Yeah, the Enterprise. I'm talking about there is the Enterprise C, which is the Ambassador class. But when they go through the time rift, things on board the Enterprise D changes. So the Enterprise D bridge actually changes. Their uniforms change, and the layout of the bridge itself changes in that episode. So that's why I'm saying it's the Enterprise D variant bridge when it's during the time.
They use the D.
Well, it's not the, well, I don't know if it's called the Dark Universe version, but yeah, because they also put like the extra consoles, they put extra control consoles on the bridge in yesterday's Enterprise. That first of all, they also make it so there's an elevated platform because the Enterprise D bridge is also very flat, and the up and down and height variation of things like the Star Trek A bridge gives you something to walk around and be on different heights and levels with people, and so I think that's easier to make to shoot cool angles with than the D, which is all flat. So on the yesterday's Enterprise, they actually put elevation on that variant bridge and put extra control consoles around and are manned by other people, and it looks better. But it's still a TV set, and I was reading that one of the reasons why it's dark. Okay, we're gonna have theatrical lighting, but they were using the TV sets like right out of this, and part of the concern was that if you're doing it on film, you're all of a sudden going to realize these are TV sets because they're not as good as a film set is going to be.
Well, and back then it was a different aspect ratio, right?
Yes, right, yes. And you're shooting in a different aspect ratio. So that, I guess I forgive that because you're like, okay, now this is the movie. So it's just going to look different. But it does, because it's supposed to be exactly the same thing, it's weird to me.
Yeah.
Let's see. But I do like the extra control of the bridge. Let's see. So that could be that, well, we got to use these. We got to blow it up because we can't go. We got to build new sets that will actually be movie quality. And I heard that was a reason why they were going to blow up the Enterprise too. You're talking about the aspect ratio?
Oh.
Because the Enterprise D is designed for a TV, the 1980s TV aspect ratio. So it fills the screen, right? It's and I think it looked fine. The exterior, I think the ship itself looked fine on the big screen. Yes. But when you look at the Enterprise E, the redesign of the ship is designed for a film aspect ratio. You're supposed to be able to shoot that in aspect ratio.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is a dumb reason to get rid of it. But from that, we got to do this. We're going to have this blow up. You would have benefited actually from some breathing space in here in time, because, well, if you wanted to move to a different ship, I said this is kind of jumping forward to the E a little bit, but that scene of the christening, You were talking about
Oh,
taking
yeah.
that with the B, but in Generations, I would have started, I think, if you want to do a new ship, start the next generation crew with that christening, the bottle and stuff like that, and have it crash onto a new ship for them. If you got to have a new ship and you're upgrading everything for the movies, open with them getting a new ship christened.
Totally. That's a great idea. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think they just rushed it because this is a movie. You don't have to use the TV sets. It's not like when they came up with Star Trek the Motion Picture, they're like, man, do we still have the the original series bridge set to help save a buck? No, they built a set for the movie. So, I think the thinking was that they were going to be able to save all this money by just using TV sets, and then ran into the problems that you're talking about where the TV sets weren't built for the movies. So they just rushed it. And I think the real conclusion is it should never have happened. This movie should not have been made. It was not, at least not in this form.
It looks cheap for different reasons that we talk about, the setting and stuff like that. We'll talk about that. But even the uniforms, the uniforms don't even fit them. I mean, there are scenes when the uniforms do not fit them. And they're wearing, so that was Deep Space Nine had just come out. So Deep Space Nine got its new uniforms that I'm not as big a fan of, the turtlenecks, with the slight open here and stuff. So that was the Deep Space Nine. So they tried to integrate those into this as, I guess, a stepping forward in time. So that you see people wearing both of those uniforms. But the uniforms, when they're in this Deep Space Nine uniforms, they don't even fit the actors. And that's because they actually used other, like, actual Deep Space Nine costumes for other actors. Geordi walks in after Geordi's got the visor thing. If you're watching, Geordi walks in and the sleeves on his uniform are coming down to his knuckles.
Dude, take a needle and hem it.
I know, and it's because he's wearing Miles O'Brien's Deep Space Nine uniform. They look baggy. They're wearing other people's uniforms. I think Riker is wearing Cisco's uniform.
Oh my God!
And that's why it doesn't fit them right. It looks baggy. It's not tailored well.
Let me see what the budget to this was.
Right. The main characters from TNG had to borrow uniforms from DS9 main characters in certain scenes. And you can tell that's part of it. Is it doesn't fit. Like, that bothers me too, that you've got the turtleneck up, but then you've got the overshirt, which looks really flimsy and is often like not following the line that it should be following, like, on a military,
the contours,
in the middle of battle and whatever. But it's just sloppy. I always liked the DS9 uniforms. Sable says my favorite were the gray ones with the colored turtlenecks, though. So that's in the first contact uniforms. The designs of the uniforms get continuously better as the different series progressed. They couldn't alter them because they were going back to the DS9 set. But it's like, here we're trying to shoot a movie.
It's a movie.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, the movie should come with its own budget. You should rebuild all the sets that this movie itself needs, no matter how much might be similar to a TV set. Buy new costumes. Like, this is a movie. You graduated. Get away from the TV stuff. You don't need to recycle that stuff. Build it all new. Start new. I just looked it up. The production budget for Generations, $38 million. That's nothing. So they must have pitched this as, we could do it on the cheap because of all these little shortcuts. And we'll bring Kirk back. We'll bring Patrick Stewart in. On paper, Shatner plus Stewart plus Star Trek equals this amount of money. We'll do it for you in $38 million. Yeah. And I think they grossly miscalculated. This movie worldwide made $120 million. So they probably made a few bucks, but if you include marketing, not much.
But it did not launch the franchise. Like, if you're talking about, you're trying to make this, like, what is it supposed to do? This is supposed to majorly launch a new film franchise, and it has failed at this. I do like 100%. I agree that the First Contact uniforms are really good. I had forgotten about them until I watched Starfleet First Contact again today. I do like them, but I do like my favorite are still the original series maroon uniforms. I love them, but but the Next Generation, the later series Next Generation are also some of my favorites. Probably my second favorite. But okay, so I don't know what this is about as far as a theme goes. This doesn't have a theme. We briefly bring back aging in that beginning, but that's not, so that kind of gets touched on, but that's not what this movie is about. This movie doesn't, I don't know what I would say it's about as far as the theme goes.
Well, that's a great point. I wanted to mention too, real quick. Kirk looks younger in Generations than he did in Undiscovered Country. In Undiscovered Country, he's kind of like silver frosted. You know, he looks like a guy, but in this one, he looks a little like his hair's brown again. He looks a little bit younger. He actually looks just a little thinner. And I was like, man, Kirk, this seems like, I don't know. Everything about it just didn't bring the continuity. But in terms of what this movie's about, I think you're right. Structurally, it just seemed like as far as they got in their thinking was, let's have a villain. Let's have the villain have a motivation, and let's have Kirk and Picard interfere with this villain and his motivation. And that seems to be the extent of what they came up with structurally. So you have you know, what's funny is his name is what was his name? Tolian Sauron. Do you know that when I was writing it into my notes, it came up Tolkien Sauron?
Well, that's what Sable was saying. The next oh no, wait a minute. The name. Yeah, that's the villain's name too. It yanks me out of the story because were you talking about Sauron and Mordor here? Like, why would you? That's a weird name.
Well, what's funny though is when I wrote Tolian, it came up as Tolkien. It auto-corrected it to Tolkien, and then you have Sauron, which is so it's really weird that you have Tolkien Sauron as the autocorrect to this character. So it almost seems intentional, you know? And yeah, it does take you out. It's not a great name, and it's already been used. Come up with something else, you know? Yeah, this movie is about $38 million. Well, and even so, they introduced the Next Generation on a ship. So this is another setting, and there are many.
Yeah.
They're all wearing this like Napoleonic era like role play or uniforms and stuff. And I thought, and I was like, oh, okay, cool for a second. And then it's like 5 minutes later, I was like, okay, like let's get off the holodeck. And then it was like 10 minutes later, Worf falls off into the water. I was like, all that for like a get wet gag? Like,
right. Yeah. That's a long scene. That's a long, they spend a long time on board that Napoleonic sailing ship.
Yeah. Why? The only that it all looks like filler. And it must have cost $50,000 to rent this set out for a day. And just to put the crew into this like situation. Anyway, it was a bizarre introduction. It was a bizarre way to introduce the Next Generation crew because they're not in their Starfleet uniforms. Yeah, I think you really would want to introduce them that way. Two, it was cool to see them dressed as naval officers from a different era, but not to introduce them and not for 12 minutes or however long the scene goes. I mean, that was pretty surprisingly long. And what would have been cool? Know what would have been cool? If they're on the holodeck and a French ship is pulling up alongside and they're exchanging broadsides and there's some sort of naval engagement, or they're at the Battle of Trafalgar and it's Patrick Stewart calling out the shots here, and then we find out they're on the holodeck. That might have been cool. Again, 4 or 5 minutes max.
Yeah, because it's not like you spend a lot of budget blowing things up on that, with cannons or anything like that. Because that was
it's like an 8-year-old birthday party. It's G-rated. They're all just hanging out, smiling, and then happy birthday to Worf. Oh, you fell in the water. I paid to come in here and watch this in this theater. This is how you're entertaining me.
It only even mildly drives the data. Or very weakly drives the data emotion chip thing, because he's like, oh, I didn't get it. I pushed the doctor into the water, and so now I'm going to go put in my emotion chip. But yeah, that's part of this. Yeah. This movie takes a long time. You got the B thing, which actually I'm like, just as far as starting on action and something like that. Okay, the B thing, we got the ship in danger, we got all that. But then once we get to the new crew, it's slow.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you just mentioned the data chip scenario setup.
Oh, sorry. Could we? Table says, "Can we forget about that?" It was, man. I got tired of that gag.
I did like him drinking that liquor and saying it was awful, and then when they asked him if he wanted more, he said yes.
Yes.
I thought that was funny. That cracked me up. I laughed out loud watching it, and because he's like, "Oh, I have an emotion. I don't know what it is," and they're like, "Hate." He's like, "Yes, hate. I hate this," and he's like, "Oh God, I hate it. Do you want another?" Yes, please.
Yes, please. Right. Yes,
That
that
pretty
worked.
good.
So it can work, but it just that gag went on and on and on and
That
on.
was the only gag we needed.
That was the
Because
only one
him
that we
laughing and it was unnerving and jarring to see Data so out of control emotionally. It was like being with like a 10-year-old kid who's just running amok. And this is supposed to be Data. He's supposed to be a Starfleet officer. More, please. Yeah, I'm telling you that gag worked for me. But I agree with everyone else. He began to do it more and more, and I was like, it was like Jar Jar Binks. It's like the gag isn't built to be sustained. It's good for a one-shot, good laugh, not to run through a 2-hour movie.
And then not only so you go through all of that, then you go through the long scenes with the vulnerable Picard, and because of his brother and nephew being dead. Yeah,
which I never believed in that emotional condition of his.
I don't either. Right?
In fact, I had to rewind it to figure out what. So they made a mistake, and we've talked about this on this channel. You can't have characters who know information withhold it, and they're like, "Captain, and he's like, I'm mad at you, Data," and he turns. It's like no one knows the context because you haven't told us what he's going through yet. So they show all this stuff with Picard reacting without the context. And then they're like, "Oh yeah, it's family members of mine who died in a fire." And it's like, have I met these family members? Like, who are these family members that we're supposed to feel so bad about?
Well, right.
Were they in the Next Generation?
Yes, they were, because they're in the episode. Was the nephew in there? I know the brother was, because in the episode, we'll talk about dealing with the Borg as well. But after Picard's assimilation and then de-assimilation, he goes back home to Paris, and he does interact, or goes back to France. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but yes, family.
Family, yeah, okay.
Is where Kirk, whose family? Is where Kirk family? Okay, wait, Picard.
It would be Picard, right?
Yeah, because he goes back to deal with some of the emotion and issues of having been deborgified, or having been Borgified, and now because he considers leaving after that incident, and is talking about on the. So yes, they were in there, but La Barre, France. Okay, so that did exist, but yeah, you would not. If this is your first introduction to Picard, you don't know that.
Well, you're supposed to be able to make the movie stand alone. So even Wrath of Khan works, even if you never saw Space Seed, right? It works. You don't. Space Seed is just like a bonus if you go back and watch it and you get to see the full context of that episode. But I can watch, and I did watch. I watched Wrath of Khan before I ever saw Space Seed. I never had to ask any questions or be confused at any point. Here I was confused. I don't remember the episodes of Next Generation as well as I do like the original series, but I wasn't too sure about the family members, and the movie itself didn't do enough to show me why he cared. They just said, it's like, if let's say you're a regular normie and you're showing up in the theater and he's like, X and Y died and now I'm sad they died in a fire. It's like, okay. And then it's like, oh, this is going to be a major theme for why this character behaves the way he does when he's in the Nexus. And it's like, you never sold me that much on the situation with the dead relatives, to the extent that I would be concerned at all about Picard being in the Nexus. So, and even with Kirk, I felt like like Antonia and
Yes, that's not somebody you had heard of.
I never heard of Antonia, and he's like, and this is Butler, my horse. And I was like, Butler? Who's Butler? Butler the horse and Antonia. I don't know these characters. So anyway, I couldn't get invested in the situation that they were in the Nexus because I don't think I ever got invested in their private lives as portrayed in the early part of the film.
Right. It's trying. Wild Barley says the deaths don't improve the plot. They don't change his final motivation, which seeks Kirk's help as the resolution, not overcoming loss.
Yeah.
Right? It's trying to say that, oh, look, and now he's got this family, which, by the way, that scene in that house also goes when in Picard's house in the Nexus. That's also a long scene for him to be like, oh, hi, Papa. And oh, hi, would you like some tea? And oh, we decorate the Christmas tree. And that also goes on. That goes on and on and on. But so it's supposed to be, oh, this is his temptation. But by the way, even, Guinan was like, once you go there, you will never want to leave. But Picard, basically instantly wants to leave. And he doesn't suffer any type of, it's really easy for Picard to go, you know what? I'm out of here. So it didn't help. Thank you for my dolly. Thank you for my dolly. Right?
I mean, exactly. I wanted to leave. Like, if you want to create a scenario in your plot where the plot line is, once you go into the Nexus, you will not want to come out. Well, now you've got to deliver as a filmmaker. You've got to create a scenario where the audience is going, oh man, I don't think I would leave either. And they put me in a scenario where I was like, let's get out of this house.
I know.
I'm over Christmas in Dickens world, England. I'm done. And did you notice there's a hysterically bad camera shot? They put Christmas lights up in the it's like they put Christmas lights on the camera and they spun it around as he's coming out of it. And I was like, what are those? And as it stopped, I was like, did they put Christmas lights on the camera and spin it? I mean, that's below mid, even for a $38 million budget. that is like something I would come up with for a home video here with my kids, maybe. I was like, let's put lights on the camera. Terrible.
Yes.
So yeah, they said that you will never want to come out of this world, and they put the audience in this world, and I think I'm not alone saying the audience was like, let's get out of here. Like, there was no seduction of the audience in the scene.
No. And but even as a kid, I had a problem. I was like, man, if he wasn't supposed to want to leave, he just left.
That was easy.
That was easy. And you can apparently just get out of it, right? You can just I want to leave, and then you can just go wherever you want.
The clapper
made no sense to me. But so we finally, at some point in all of this, do have the idea that we've got this destructive tri-lithium weapon, which is kind of it's got some of the features of Genesis, and that again we're introducing a major destructive weapon, or something that was designed for something else. This one, Genesis, was designed for something else, but we've got this majorly destructive weapon. In some ways, it feels like we're kind of doing the Death Star ratchet up. I didn't really notice that, I think, as on the first watch through. So I was like, this is kind of the ratchet up, because this time you can take out an entire solar system. Because with the Genesis torpedo, you could take out a whole planet. We need to ratchet this up. So this time they've got something that can take out a whole solar system. But, okay.
But you have to demonstrate it somehow, right?
Yeah. And so, okay, yes. Now, I will say, by the way, that the shock wave that the star generates, at least that is a sphere that's spherical in 3 dimensions. Because like the Praxis shock wave is flat for some reason. We were wondering why that is, and it happens to hit the Excelsior. But this one, the shockwave, the star blows up, and it is a sphere. But we finally get there.
I like how that's what you're complimenting them on.
The sphere, right? That was one of the things that I liked. I was going to point out
a 3-dimensional shockwave, which was an improvement over 2-dimensional.
And Wild Barley and I were talking about this, that we do have a few seeds that I think if somebody had been thinking about, and somebody said, hey, listen, we want to design a movie arc. We're going to take our time to design a movie arc for the next generation. We've got the Duras sisters coming in, which have their backstory from the next generation. And you've got this idea. They say something about reconquering the Klingon Empire. So we're kind of importing loosely in this movie. We're very loosely importing the idea of the Klingon Civil War. We had the collaboration between the some factions of the Klingon Empire during the Civil War and the Romulans. And here we have this idea of Romulans, in this show again. That they just show up dead here, but there was the Romulans are after something. So I think that would have been a good one. The daughter of Tasha Yar. I would have looked for other things in the Next Generation that never really got followed up on. I would have used Romulans in a new series of the Next Generation because we saw Klingons so much in the original series movies. We said they were overused. Romulans were supposed to be in. Klingons got accidentally overused.
Big time.
So we could still have the Klingon Civil War, so they could be there, but it's time for the Romulans to have been a major plot element of the Next Generation arc. I would have used that information to go forward and make an arc for the Next Generation.
I think that would have been great because those are the two classic enemies, and yet we only see one over and over and over again. And this is the one where we go to the Klingons again, and this has the double female Klingon.
Right, the Duras sisters, yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the movie where they reuse the footage of the bird of prey.
Correct. So another cheap thing that happened is that this is when the bird of prey, the cloaking, I was going to check and I didn't, but the footage of them cloaking, I think might also be reused. But the footage of the destruction of that bird of prey is.
Yeah, and so it swings across the screen and cloaks exactly like Star Trek 3 with Krug.
Okay, so that's reused too.
Yes.
So that's so cheap. And especially, that's why I thought that when I first watched Star Trek 6 and went, we've got reused footage here. No. That was the original footage. That was Meyer putting the money where it's important to do the destruction of Chang's bird of prey.
Yes.
And then in the next movie, you take that epic ending that was so amazing and then you cheapen it by reusing it as the destruction of the Duras bird of prey. And it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Penny pinching at its finest. TV producers making a film. I hate it even more because it disparages what Meyer did in 6.
Yes, it does. So first off, this is 80 years in the future. Okay. That bird of prey is done. And they had to write it. I noticed they did write it into the script. Like, oh yeah, this is an obsolete model of Klingon ship that they're flying. It's like, then why that's like if I want my hero on a aircraft carrier, or let's say he's in an F-35, and then along comes a biplane from France, and you shoot it at. Why would anyone be flying a biplane anymore? We used those 80 years ago. No one's flying those. So it was really odd that they would, and especially in the future where technology is probably being obsolete in a faster and faster pace. So it was stupid to include a Klingon, basically a Kirk era villain in a Next Generation scenario, and reuse the footage from the Kirk era. And even the costumes, the Klingons were identical. They just made them 2 women instead. It was really bizarre. And they have that funny, goofy line where
the Duras sisters were in the Next Generation.
Okay. I know, but they had that one funny line where they see Beverly Crusher and they're like, Earth women are so gross. And she's like, ew. I was like, what? What are we doing here? But that did make me laugh, though. I felt that was actually pretty funny.
Now that one, too, I could leave that one in too. Like if they're looking at something like that, and they turn to each other, or something like that. So okay, I mean, I can go with that.
It's just funny because they're so hideous with all that stuff.
and it's Gates McFadden. I mean, she appears just beautiful on the screen, of course.
Yeah, exactly. She looks gorgeous, and then you have these 2 gross looking, and they really exaggerate the look of disgust. They're like, like gross.
the plot about whatever Soren is doing and the way he's going about it, if you can extract that from all of the other filler that we're talking about that's going on in here, it's a really weak plot line. It's just like
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Like, why in the world they beamed up Geordi? What he was expecting to do, anyway, he wasn't expecting the Romulans to attack or whatever, so he was going to shoot but then why beam up Geordi? Why? That's just something that happens in here, and then it's used over. The attack on the Enterprise doesn't even make sense. That the way they go about the prisoner exchange, I mean, what's supposed to be the actual action plot of the film, or the main drive of this film, is so weak with just like incidental connections between one thing to another, and you're going, why would they actually do that? You don't notice, I think, perhaps as much on the very first viewing, maybe because you're interrupted by all the filler, so you're not really paying attention that what they're trying to do here doesn't really make a whole lot of sense anyway. But when you actually look at it, you go, this is really weak.
And that's kind of a feature of like the Abrams model. Go fast, don't give your audience a chance to think about the plot, but after multiple viewings, you're like, wait a minute. What? And none of it makes sense. That is how this was put together.
Except for this movie is go slow. Because you'll go through the filler scenes, and then you'll get back to something that has relevant to the charm. Oh yeah. They were trying to blow up a star or something, right?
I think I just figured out how J.J. Abrams devised his model. He was watching The Next Generation. He's like, this plot doesn't make sense, and he was sitting in the theater and he goes, just go fast and don't make sense. And he ran off to Hollywood and he started making Star Trek movies and Star Wars movies. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he made it off the ground like that. But what else is funny is Sauron goes, and I laughed because it was another example of like a bad script moment. He goes, we are a race of listeners. And then he monologues for the next 2 minutes.
Well, we are a race of listeners. We listen. Okay, we got you there, right? Yes, yes. I was expecting him because you've got my full attention. Why does... Yeah, and then he doesn't listen, but he wants Geordi to tell him about trilithium, but he's the genius who's been making this weapon. I didn't understand, because that was one of those things like, oh, maybe he was trying to capture Geordi because Geordi has information on trilithium that he needs. But that he did not. That was nothing. Like the capture of Geordi appears to be incidental. That would be okay. I'm going to take a hostage. Okay, then the plot point would be that I'm going to take a hostage. But that makes it sound like Geordi's got some information that he needs, and then they come up with just seemingly on the fly this visor thing, which I hate, is a rehash. You're right, of something that happened in the Next Generation episode.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about? I got stuff to say about this visor issue, but do you?
I don't. I didn't even. I was so annoyed. I didn't even put it in my notes. I just. In fact, my notes got real thin through here. I was just like, Data not doing well, jokes not landing, heritage exchange. Oh yeah, hostage exchange, Geordi. I think that's all I wrote. I just didn't care. Like I wasn't too invested. I couldn't mentally lock into this plot because it seemed like solving a child's maze written in crayon that doesn't work. So it's like, why? I'm not going to solve the maze. I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do this.
Yes, I agree. Now, because it's, Sauron hands them, so he's going to give them the weapon. He's going to get into the Matrix, into the Nexus. But the Duras sisters get this weapon in order to go fight the war. And he hands over the chip and says, here's what you need in order to construct the weapon. I won't, but you can't decrypt it. I will, once I'm down on the planet, I will send you the decryption codes. That never happens. But okay, he does get down there, but I assume that he does that. So he goes down to the planet, and then I would assume, okay, I'm down on the planet, bargain, done, submit decryption codes. The Duras sisters should then fly off at that point. There's no reason for them to fight the Enterprise. They'd be like, we just got the plans to our super weapon. Sayonara, we're out of here.
Totally.
But they decide to fight the Enterprise for this reason. And so they come up with this ad hoc plan with this visor. I do think it's funny that they're going to be able to look through his visor. Okay,
right.
So whatever. They're going to be able to look through his visor. I do think it was funny that, like, what has he been doing? Oh, he took a bath. He went someplace else. He's the only engineer in Starfleet who does not go to engineering.
He never goes to engineering.
That was a good lie. But the idea that this works, that the shield modulation, this is a very important number this is a very important number for your starship. The frequency of your shields, because you don't want that to get out. And yet that number is just displayed, right? Just simply just written right there in engineering. Oh, this is our shield modulation number. And then they see this. This battle drives me crazy. It's because, you're going to the movie because the billing, like we said, we're going to see the destruction of the Enterprise. And there was no reason for the Enterprise to be destroyed here. It did nothing. So I really want to contrast the destruction of the Enterprise D with the destruction of the refit Enterprise. Here we've got another example of where something is done very well in Star Trek 3. So that was Star Trek 3. And it's done terribly in this movie because this is how not to do it. How to do it versus how not to do it. The destruction of the refit Enterprise is extremely significant. It's got emotional impact. You're attached to this ship. It's a sacrifice to get rid of it. I mean, this is a big deal that it goes out in a sacrifice, and it's treated like a character. Chris Moore will say that the death of a character is not so much about the death of that character, but about everybody's reaction to that death, which is done fantastically with Spock. And it's done fantastically with the destruction of the refit Enterprise, because you see that on everybody's face. Because it's streaking down. That's like its funeral scene when it's streaking across the atmosphere. Beautiful scene. What have I done? Their reaction.
Remorse.
Right. That. So that's all of that. That's the way to do that right. The way to do it wrong is what happened in Generations. We've got a fight that doesn't need to take place. The Enterprise is not destroyed for any reason that's material to the plots. There's no sacrifice. There was no something like that. In fact, the Enterprise didn't have anything to do because Picard was down on the planet dealing with our bad guy. That's what we were trying to solve our problem for this movie with the bad guy. The Enterprise needed to have a purpose up there that, oh no, now Riker can't do his part to protect, to end this big plot because now the Enterprise is under attack and is going to be destroyed. When the Enterprise is destroyed, it's like, oh my God, they destroyed the Enterprise. Now they can't stop Soren. Oh no, wait a minute. Actually, they can, because the existence of the Enterprise was absolutely immaterial to being able to stop Soren's plot. So that Riker's line, that plot of on board the Enterprise and all that goes nowhere. It's a complete branch from what the weak plot anyway, a branch from the very weak plot that goes nowhere and yet is supposed to be so significant. And when you see what is the character's response to the destruction of the Enterprise, who have been on board this ship for this, 8 years of, it wasn't 8 years, 8 seasons of the Next Generation, they would think you'd be attached to it. And yet they really don't care.
There's no real reaction. At
the end of the movie, like that's supposed to be the funeral scene for the D. Give me some emotion right there if you want that. But no, they're like, right about as emotional as it gets is Riker goes, well, I'm going to miss this ship. I mean, that's like, you say that to like, I don't know, like a car, a rental car that you thought was nice, like you had for the weekend, and you're like, that was a nice car. I guess I'm gonna miss that car. You don't say that to the, and then everybody's like, but there'll be another Enterprise. There are a lot of left. It's like completely okay that it gets
it reinforces the idea that these ships are disposable and not of any real value.
Yeah, and it was so badly done. The death of the Enterprise is completely badly done.
So 80 years ago was 1944. So take an F-35 and put it up against an 80-year-old German warplane from 1944. If you're Picard and you lost the Enterprise to an 80-year-old Klingon vessel, you should be fired.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but there's no so walk me through the whole thing. I thought that when they were shooting, I was like, change the modulation.
I know. So right, exactly. So first of all, that modulation number is right up there.
Change it.
Yeah, like the computer should have changed it. I mean, the computer should go like instantly realize we've had shield breach and instantly remodulate the shields. Now,
instantly,
that should have been done instantly. And in the event that you're not going to have the computer instantly remodulate the shields because you want a character to do it and to be agentive in the story, I would get that. Worf needs to do that instantly. Worf is like, they found some way to shoot through our shields. I wonder what, like, no one on board that, like Geordi, but it should have been Worf. But Riker, nobody thought, oh my God, remodulate our shield frequency.
Think about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Sir, our shields are dropping. What's the first, or where's the override?
Override.
Khan react.
They act like idiots that know that. First of all, you could have also put a timer on the Duras sisters by saying that shields, Federation Galaxy class starships, modulate their shield every 7.5 minutes. That there's a new number or something. So as soon as they see it, you could have put a timer on the Duras sisters to go and get it. We still need a reason for the Duras sisters to attack. That we still have that problem. But if they have a reason to attack and they're in this old bird of prey, they get the modulation and they've got basically one shot that they've got to take within a certain amount of time to try to disable the Enterprise and fight. That could have worked. But they shoot, but they get the modulation numbers. Nobody can figure out what's going on. And once again in Star Trek, they don't ever show the Enterprise firing. This is a movie. Finally, I'm very critical often because I know it's a special effects thing from earlier ones. Like you never see the Enterprise really open up. But here you're supposed to be in a movie. Now we should have a movie budget. And if you're ever going to see, and especially during the TV show too, like, I mean, man, there were battles where I wanted the Enterprise D to open up, like in yesterday's Enterprise. And it will still be just like zzz, 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 one little phaser fire. Now is the time. Even if you're, because they only shot once. There was only one phaser shot from the Enterprise in that, and Riker's running away. Even if your shields are down, blow it away. Blow it away. Like, it's not cloaked. You know, it's got its shields up, but you're a Galaxy class starship. It is time to phaser, just overwhelm it and blow it up. And they don't even shoot at it. It's so
you said that before, and I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, although I'm definitely not a fan of the 2009 reboot. There are some things I liked about the reboot, but I'm not a big fan of it. There was one scene that I loved, and it was in the opening sequence. The Nero ship comes out and it launches, and the Enterprise, or it's not the Enterprise, it's George Kirk is on board, and this ship opens up. They have this camera shot of a missile corkscrewing up underneath toward the hull, and you see phasers sweeping. You see, I mean, I remember seeing that in the trailer and being like, oh man, a Federation starship under stress, like lighting up everything it's got. I love that. That I love because of what you're talking about. The older films just never let us see them open up. And we'll get into First Contact when all the fleet battling the Borg. Man, such a letdown. I never felt like they have these little like blue, blue sound effects. And
we will get to that. Yeah,
we'll get to that. But I like you. I always, the Kelvin. Thank you, BGD. I knew that. I was blanking out.
The Kelvin timeline.
I completely never got that itch scratched in the old movies. I wanted to see a major capital. The closest I got to this day, I think, still is Star Trek II. Capital on capital, two ships going at it. But it wasn't what you're talking about. All hands on deck, all batteries fire. You know what I'm saying? That's what I missed.
Worf should have been taking out that Klingon word of prey. I mean, like, he should have been opening up on the tactical display. Totally. We're just going to hammer it. But
to be honest, even from 2024 standards, if a ship's shields are going to be modulating, you would imagine they would be encrypted, meaning nobody knows the modulation. The ship constantly changes it.
Right.
That's 2024 thinking. So, I don't know. They could have done better.
But here is also something that we talked about. I remember, like, when it first came out, like my friend and I, that the way that you can shoot through your shields is because you've got a modulation frequency, and so you calibrate your weapons to your shield frequency. That way you can shoot through your own shields. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to shoot. Well, so you got to be able to shoot out and out from storage.
Hell,
that means that when they calibrate or they modulate their torpedoes, that means that the Enterprise's weapons should also be on their frequency. At that moment, they should both be able to shoot through each other's shields. After that
that's
attack,
a great point.
After that attack, the Klingon ship would need to remodulate because it can't be hit. And bring that up as a plot point. If we do this, we got 7 minutes. And by the way, when we're firing, they will also be able to hit us. So we have to surprise them and, hit right with this torpedo exactly, where we need to disable whatever. Make that a plot point.
That's a brilliant point. Is both shields would have to be on the same modulation at that point. You're totally right. That's great. I mean, it's almost like, remember those funny enough, the biplanes, they would have the machine guns. They would time them so that they could shoot through the propellers.
Right.
That's the same idea.
It is. Yes.
You're timing it. So, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like that was a pretty weak idea. And to your point, to make it even more hysterical, they have the modulation 257.2. Boom. You're like out in the open. I don't know about you, but I mean, that's a security code. That's like having a nuclear launch code on the screen in an 80s submarine movie. Like, you don't leave that kind of massive security detail out in the open ever. They treat it like it's the temperature. Like a thermostat.
Or what the AC setting or something.
Can you turn up the modulation just a tad?
The plot, it's so many, like when Picard goes down, like Picard wants to go talk to Soren.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, we're going to handle this by talking to him, but there's no reason why Soren shouldn't just shoot him.
Totally.
Like, oh, look, I'm Picard beam down. I'm trying to stop this. I'm largely going to do this by, trying to, talk to you and monologue to you. But Soren be like, oh, I don't think so. And just shoot him. And that would have been it.
Well, and what's funny is knowing how the movie ends, this guy is unreasonable. There's no ground to be gained from a conversation. And if conversing with this man is on the table, there should be some evidence, maybe some rapport, like someone that Picard knew. Like, I knew him, from something in the past. He'll listen to me. There should be some reason to believe that this plan would work. Versus, hey, this guy's a raging lunatic from a different time. Let me go reason with him in person. So, and the other note I wrote, and this, this is probably one of the biggest things that bothered me. This set, it's like a barren, rocky top with stairs on it. I had better sets when I was a kid. Me and my buddies made a movie. We got permission from the owner to film inside of a sheet metal factory. I played a robot, and I had this whole thing that I had on my head. I think I told you this. I had a LED light with a thumb. I could turn on the LED light and everything. We had firecrackers and guns, so when we would aim and shoot, it go boom, and it would echo. Dude, I had a better set in my childhood film than this set here in Star Trek Generations. This is not a professional level set at all.
And it gets just as much screen time as like the bridge of the Enterprise.
It's on this screen a ton. Yes, you're totally right. It's unbelievable how long they filmed here. And to your point, like, it doesn't make sense that Picard goes down, right? Let me reason with him. So it doesn't make sense that he's going to do that. He beams down, and you can tell the screenwriter just ran out of gas, because there's a scene where Picard's just like, and sits and waits, because there's a barrier, an energy barrier, and Sauron's pushing buttons, and Picard is he sees a hole in the rock. I'm like, dude, you do something. You can't have your lead character take a seat because he's out of moves. You cannot have this. And they had this in Generations.
Here is a huge problem with the theme and what's going on here. This is a classic example. This movie contains a classic example of just telling somebody that something is significant does not mean that it's significant, even when it's millions of lives. Because one of the themes of this movie could be like, what are you willing to do? Who are you willing to kill in order to achieve paradise? Like, in order to get back to the Nexus, this idyllic kind of place, how many people are you willing to kill? Or to what length are you going to go? So supposedly Soren is that type of villain.
Right.
Because when they're in stellar cartography and Picard is talking to Data and they're like, oh my God, the planet, the sun's going to blow up again and everything in the solar system will be wiped out. This planet over here, not the one that they're on, because we don't have enough budget to actually put people on this planet, but another planet in the system has 290 million people on it or something. He just says this has 290 million people. So we're supposed to be, oh my God, he's going to kill 290 million people. But you never see these people. You have no emotional connection to these people whatsoever. I think it's brought up one more time when Picard's like, are you really going to kill 190 million people? But it's only academic at this point. Like in this film, we just say there are 190 million people. There's no emotional weight to that at all.
Totally. And in fact, just to parallel what you're saying, when you say, like Joseph Stalin, I think, made this quote, if you kill one person, that's a tragedy. When you kill 1 million people, it's a statistic. People lose sense of the gravity of it when you just put a number out there like that. So if you said Picard's daughter is on that, or his sister's on that planet, that will hold a lot of weight because it's a person we don't want to. But remember in this the movie Superman in 1978, he launches 2 missiles and Superman can only stop one of them. But Lex, my grandma lives in Hackensack, New Jersey. So suddenly we don't think about the whole city and the population. We just know that Miss Tessmacher's mom lives there. That's all that was needed for that plot for her to change her motivation, for her to save the people. She was saving her grandmother. So when you say without any other proof, you don't show the civilization, you don't show the planet, you don't show a single person, 290 million, we're just like, oh, that, wow, okay. Zero connection. It's just, it's a stat. It's a stat line.
So it would have been, this is an example where he could have been to kill less people. They try to make it significant by giving the 290 million mark.
But that's not even a lot from a planetary level. We have,
I know. I thought about that too.
Today?
But I guess they could, whatever, trillions or whatever. But that would have been even more ridiculous. Like, oh my God, you're going to kill 1 trillion people to do
that's
this.
Like just Thanos level.
But it would have, if you could even do this plot by having him need to kill or having to kill just one person. If the audience really cares about that person, and Soren is willing to kill that person that you were emotionally invested in order to achieve paradise, that would have been that same theme. And you could have developed the theme around that. And you wouldn't have had to go big, just, the bigness of the number doesn't matter. It's the emotional impact. And this,
well, and at the end of the day, okay, so you just pointed out how they never showed you this planet. They never showed you these people. It is just a stat. On top of that, it's some guy saying it on a barren, rocky ground around a metal stairwell. Like, who cares? Like, do we believe him? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no weight to that. Like when Thanos said he was going to kill 1 trillion or, trillions with a snap. A, Thanos fought for that moment through multiple films. And B, half the superheroes died. We're invested in these people. So there's a situation where the villain has earned his moment and you cared about the result. A, the villain hasn't earned the moment. B, it's 290 million of statistical people and he's on a rock when he says it with no background, like in the most unimpressive set possible. So there's just no way for this plot line to mean jack to a viewer.
I agree. By the way, I was also talking about slowness. This goes back to the battle, but this drove me crazy because it seems like it lasted forever. Yeah. Because they make a big deal out. We're going to send out this energy frequency or whatever, which is going to trigger some defect on this ship, which is going to lower the shields. Right. And they say we've only got 2 seconds. So the lower the shields before they cloak. We're going to have a window of 2 seconds. But they take forever to shoot that photon torpedo. I mean, they lost that 2 seconds. Like, they did not make that shot because, the Duras sisters are like, we're cloaking, we're cloaking. And you spend several seconds on board the bridge with like the Duras sisters looking at you. What we're they don't say that. Whatever. Like, there's several seconds that pass by. Then you cut back to the bridge. Like, talk about an unnecessary order. Worf would know to fire. Like, as soon as he sees this, you fire Worf. Worf is like, they're cloaking. It takes you longer to tell Riker that they're cloaking than you've got to make this shot. And so, he tells the cloaking system has been activated. And then Riker takes 2 dramatic steps forward and goes, fire. And then you got like you blew it. You blew it. You did not make that shot.
I would love to make a spoof of that where he's like, oh, sorry, it closed right before he says fire. Sorry, we lost. It's the window closed. They got away.
That was just terrible. That was laughable.
Yeah, that is.
But so yeah,
and that's a rip off of Star Trek 6 too. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that. With the thing's got to have a tailpipe somewhere. I mean, it's the same. It's the same moment.
Yes, you're right. It is. And the people bring up in the comments that so much is reused.
Can I mention? I literally had to hit pause. I laughed so hard I had to hit pause, rewind, and make sure I got this quote right because it was one of the worst lines I've ever heard. It's spoken by Sauron. Now, excuse me, Captain. I have an appointment with eternity, and I don't want to be late. I was like, oh no, somebody wrote this line and put it in there. I've got a date. I've got an appointment. That sounds like a haircut. Like not a date, not like a wedding. I got an appointment with eternity, and I don't want to be late. I don't know. That's off. If it's eternity, late being is insignificant. It's eternal. So I don't know. It's everything about that line was awful, and I couldn't believe it made it into the script, and then got shut. And that the actor wouldn't be like, can we change this? I don't want to say that. Yeah, exactly. By definition, you cannot be late for eternity. You can't be early. You can't be late. It's infinite. He might get there right after eternity expires.
The evacuation of the Enterprise, the drive section.
Yeah,
that makes it weird to have kids on board. I mean, the fact that there are kids on board the Enterprise is weird. I know that in different Star Trek episodes, basically either the kids are there or they are not, depending on what you like. Do you need to think about having kids? Well, sometimes you've got episodes where you've got like they're in kindergarten and they go by to see the kindergartners. For an exploration vessel, other episodes, it would make no sense for them to take families into dangerous situations. And
Deep Space Nine, it makes sense, but on a battle cruiser, I don't think sailors take their families on like the USS Gerald Ford.
They go out. The Enterprise something goes out looking for trouble, and so that's always been a weird part. But on the other hand, so do you make them sacrifice family life? But it's weird to bring your family along, and it's weird because they're just there. The kids are there as you're running them around, and even the things that go nowhere. Isn't it? Somebody runs up and goes, "These kids don't have their parents. Hang on, let's get them out of here. We'll connect them to their family later as we're all running out." It's just so weird. Like you could have left the kids out of that. They're supposed to be doing something about. It's kind of a cheap trick, I guess, to say, "Oh my God, are the kids going to get out of here?" Because we kind of instinctively care about kids. But the weirdness of the kids running around with their teddy bear is strange. And I couldn't help but as I was watching it this time going, oh my God, you've got 4.5 minutes. All of the transporters should be beaming people from the drive section into the hull section, especially like to evacuate the sick bay, and they're trying you're trying to get people out of sick, which is basically impossible. But if you're going to be doing it, like the emergency transporters would be beaming them from the drive section to the saucer section.
Well, and to be honest, I think, there's a case that you would launch some sort of lifeboat the second you go into combat. You don't want family, get them out of there.
Get them out of there. Or actually, I thought you were going to say, instead of if you got to evacuate the drive section because it's about to blow and we're in a hurry, the people in the drive section should have already been jumping in lifeboats. Like, because it's like, if you don't get off the drive section, you're going to be lost. No, like if you're in this area, get to the saucer section. But if you're not, hop in your nearest lifeboat,
get out.
Right. Yeah.
Or don't put the kids near a dangerous area. You know, the kindergarten class is right next to the warp core. Yeah, you know.
That should have already been. Yes. Maybe the kindergarten classes should have been in the saucer section.
Exactly. It should have been in the saucer section. Yeah, because think about it. If you separate the saucer, you're like, oh, we forgot the kids. They're still in the engineering section. So yeah,
really?
like,
Coach Dable says, according to technical manual, there shouldn't be any children or families in the engineering hall anyway. See, that would make more sense. And you know, I don't know if this is nitpicking all of this, but this is the kind of stuff that I thought about. That like what you're seeing on screen doesn't make sense to the point that it's taking me out of it.
it's taking you out of the story.
You know, of what I'm being asked to believe here.
Well,
I
was just going to say that the whole crash lands.
The whole crash.
And it looks like they spent about 32 million of their 38 million on this 8-minute sliding crash.
Right. You're also sliding around for a long time.
It's funny too, because there's a couple shots where they have trees in the foreground and the hole comes right at it, but and I was like, did no trees get hurt in the filming of this thing? Because it's like they didn't want to show the hole hit a tree up close or something on a couple of these shots. But this thing slides for a while.
Yes, it is. That is also on screen for a long time. And I forget who it was put in the comments that it is Troy who's driving when this is happening. And that is also a weird part to me that like, yes, she did go through training and stuff like that, but it was just, it's for command training in the Next Generation TV show. But it's just weird. That's just weird for Riker to turn to Troy and go, take the helm. That anything that Troy had never done before?
She's more of like a social worker in essence, right?
And so she did like in order to get authorized command authorization or something like that.
The plane's going down. Do we have a social worker?
And she instantly knows how to run the helm in an emergency situation. That's again, it's just talking about something that takes you out of it. I'm like, wait a minute. Counselor Troy is about to pilot the Enterprise. It's just so
I got this. And compare that to the scene with Anakin, which was much better, even though Revenge of the Sith wasn't a perfect movie by any stretch. Anakin's whole scene was pretty cool with that crash landing. This one, she's not a pilot, so that's an automatic disqualifier in my opinion. Two, I think they blew all of their money on this one. The scene on this they filmed it from so many angles, it crashed so many times, and I feel like they thought that the gravity of this moment was enough to justify everything, and it wasn't.
It was not. It's exactly. If you spend your money on that and thinking that, man, people are going to think this is awesome, and we talked about why the destruction is not awesome anyway because of all the emotional reasons are not there. So giving us a kind of cool. I don't even think it's all that cool. But to go to that length to do the crash landing of the saucer that doesn't carry the movie. That does not make a movie make.
Well, but it was almost like crash porn. They filmed it just so long. It was actually okay. So I'll be like, it wasn't like a bad effect. It was kind of cool, but it went on so long that that whatever made it cool initially, I was irritated by there was the one scene of the front of the hull coming at you. And I was like,
it comes at you for a long time.
Like, okay.
I thought about that too. That final slide is on screen for a long time.
I was like,
almost
get it.
Comically long.
Totally. So totally. Imagine if remember we're talking about Terminator 2, the scene where they lower him down. Imagine if that lasted 4 more minutes and his hand is still, the thumb is still you take this great moment and you ruin it by overdoing it. And that's, I think, what happened here is they overdid it. And it actually took the one cool thing that they were doing and really made me disinvest. I was like, I don't know if I'm into this that much.
Wild Barley makes the point that Riker should have shut down. Like in an emergency situation, like Riker should have gone over to the helm and done that.
Yeah, and Troy, and she's a great character, but that's not the right use of her character.
Wild Barley says they should have killed Data, Geordi, Crusher, or Guinan in the crash. How about Guinan? one of them saving children or something like that, having some type of sacrifice would have been very Starfleet. Yeah,
that would have been good.
I like that. I like
that would have given some gravity to it,
because there's no consequence. There's no consequence. Okay,
right
now I'm wondering. I'm ready to move on. I'm going to go to another topic. If we,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm wondering if you were writing this out, we haven't talked about this point yet, but I'm wondering if there's any way that you could possibly make this movie worse. And they do it. Because this is also a time travel movie. And we've talked about how much we don't like, in general, time travel plots. There are a few movies that we've talked about that do that well and why they do it well and all of that.
Yep.
But to top off this movie, it is a time travel movie.
So is the next one
done well?
Yeah, we have back-to-back Star Trek time travel movies, by the way. First Contact, too.
First Contact is another time travel movie. But this movie has the time travel element into it, because when you go into the Nexus, and we talked about a lot of the problems with the Nexus anyway, and he's perfectly okay with leaving. And it also, we go into another scene that takes a long time. It takes a long time at that house. It takes a long time with Kirk. It takes a long time for them to talk about this. But I think, as Sable Phoenix has already said, this movie sucks in the time travel because the Nexus renders the whole story essentially moot anyway. The way it's set up, and we talked about this back when it first came out, the way it's set up, anytime they failed to stop Sauron, they could just let the Nexus hit and then jump back and try again. Yeah. There is no reason that there is no stakes at all, because
there's infinite lives.
Yeah, you can do this, and you have infinite lives, because anytime you fail, you just jump back into the Nexus. It completely sucks. So adding a terrible time travel component to this is like the terrible cherry on top of this terrible
sundae.
The terrible sundae that we are trying to make, because you're right, there's no stakes there at the end. And I don't even understand why, because Guinan says you can go anywhere. Guinan's there, right? So to add the time travel thing, she's out, but she's still there because of a different time.
Yeah,
whatever.
Doesn't work
she said
either.
you can go anywhere you want. And Picard, for some reason, says, I know exactly where I want to go. I want to go to Viridian 3 right before the launch of this thing. Why would you go there? Now, he doesn't know the Enterprise has been destroyed, which, by the way, why doesn't the Enterprise personnel also go into the Nexus? They're just blown up. But the Enterprise on that planet, for some reason, are not drawn into the Nexus. They're just killed. But why? So Picard doesn't know the Enterprise has been destroyed. But why wouldn't you say, I want to go back to, well, any other point in your life? Like, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I get a free redo? Like I got something I need to take care of. Let me go back to an earlier point. But why not go back to, if you just want to stick with this movie, I want to intercept the distress call from the very beginning earlier. Or why am Sauron was on board the Enterprise. I want to go back to when I was talking to Sauron on board the Enterprise D in 10 forward and cuff him right there.
That's what I was going to say, because he gives him that line, which he remembered, which is, time is the fire in which we burn. So that's stuck in Picard's mind. Remember that line? Mm-hmm. Which is, I looked it up. Delmore Schwartz said that. No other context was given, but he says the line. So that Picard had a perfect entry point where he dealt with this character in a setting where he had all the advantage. And he's like, nope, let's go where there's about 60 seconds before the villain pulls off his plot.
Yeah. So that also just inanity in this movie. It's just not, and I was we've talked about this, but I was like, to go back also, you get more footage of the rocks. I mean, so you're going back to more footage of the rocks, and the whole deal with Kirk anyway, it's such a lame scene to be bringing Kirk back to. It's a lame story anyway to be bringing. Kirk's got to come back and save. He shouldn't be doing this anyway, but to save the galaxy one last time. And it's going to be on this really lame set on a rock. I know that Star Trek doesn't get outside much because we've said that as well. But you need to put Kirk in a much more dramatic situation. This is so not dramatic. They're just kind of running around, punching each other. like shake. You can just tell there's somebody off screen shaking that bridge. Like, why does the bridge shake? But it's always shaking and stuff like that. And Kirk's like I got to make this little jump across the bridge. It's so not dramatic.
Well, he jumps the bridge. So the thing is, if you're in the Nexus, you'll never want to leave. Picard's like there for 2 minutes. He's like, all right, I'm ready to go. Kirk's there for he's like, man, I used to jump this all the time, but I'm over it now. Let's go.
Let's go. Right. Yes. Right. There's no.
But yeah, it's funny because he's like, Butler. I'm like, who's Butler? So I don't care about this dog. I don't care about Antonia, and they never even show her. You want to give a man a reason to stay inside the Nexus? Show us Antonia. Let's see what he's going to walk away from if he could have this eternity moment. So yeah, just like talk about like 290 million just being a stat. Antonia is just a word in this. It has no gravity. We never meet her. He's making breakfast. I mean, these are the most mundane things you could show Captain Kirk doing. He's like, oh yeah, cracks open an egg. I'm like, I watch my wife doing this. Who cares if Kirk's doing it? He's making a breakfast. So what? It's Kirk.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, very underwhelming sequence with him. The only thing I noted that I thought was kind of cool, and this actually has nothing to do with the movie. They do show William Shatner, the actor, as a proficient. It's not a stunt double. It is in some scenes, but he's actually riding a horse in some of these scenes. Same thing with Patrick Stewart. So I was like, both actors who played Enterprise captains can actually ride a horse proficiently enough to be filmed in a movie. I bet a lot of people can't do that anymore. So it was still cool to see this sort of skill in the actors themselves. And again, this has nothing to do with the movie, but I was proud of both Stewart and Shatner for being proficient horseback riders, enough to do some of their stunts in this film.
Yeah,
I thought
Shatner got to do with the horses again. Yeah, and he does love the horses, which is why they ride horses in Star Trek V, despite that making no sense.
Yeah, but at least they didn't do it on the hull of the Enterprise, like in.
Oh my god!
Can you imagine that?
We got to go stop this Sauron. We need to ride horses on the hull of the Enterprise.
Come on, Picard, keep up.
Oh my god, that would have been even worse. But it's so Kirk's. If you're going to show Kirk's death on board the Enterprise B was much more meaningful than I fell off a bridge, and oh my, and then Picard even leaves him there on the planet. I mean, why?
Oh my god, you're right. He leaves him.
Like, why wouldn't you bring Kirk's body back, and have him be a hero and bury him someplace? He just stacks up some rocks. Did he not tell anybody what happened? I mean,
honestly, I had better sets in my bedroom for my Star Wars figures than the set they had for this probably 35-minute sequence with Sauron. And so the other thing too is, so you have Kirk and Picard, right? So now they're gonna lock arms and they're gonna go after this nobody of a villain on this nobody of a set. And
that Wild Barley says is like an 80s He-Man playset made of rocks and metal bridges.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's terrible. What I'm saying is I could do something. I could configure my bedroom better to have more high stakes than a stairwell on a rocky slope, because that's all this was. But we do get a William Shatner fist fight. I felt some satisfaction on that. He's decking him, and I was like, all right, Shatner's still beating up somebody. I like that. But yeah, here we have Picard and Kirk. They don't do anything together. Like, this is not significant, the way that these two interact. It's not like they grabbed arms and did a double clothesline on Sauron or something. Like, they didn't do anything that merited the two of them fighting this guy.
Right. Yes. That's an excellent point as well. That's not, they didn't, for the most part, they're just punching the guy. And like, okay, you go over there to the thing. I'll go over and chase him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're not even in the ring together. You know, it's not like target that explosion and fire, where you have one guy punching, then the other guy. Like, you really don't have much with these two guys together. I think there's a small scene there, but it wasn't good. And what was that line? Captain's prerogative. Like,
yeah. Oh, I changed my mind. I came back. That was supposed to be something like the help from without, but that didn't work. That was in the wrong place. It was lame. It didn't work.
yeah, totally.
So
yeah, and then Kirk falls and dies falling off a bridge. And I'll never forget that. I remember in 1994 when I saw this, my image of Kirk laying on his back with the bridge on top of him and being like, tell my kids I loved them, but not even just dying in this terrible way. And I was like, that is effing terrible. That's like Han Solo falling into the abyss in Force Awakens. Awful. So in my head, none of this ever happened. It's not in my head canon. Star Trek ended with Kirk in Undiscovered Country. That was the perfect ending.
Yeah, talking about the death of a character, I've been forgetting that he's dead because it's so forgettable. Like the death of Kirk. So they also put it in that because he just buries him there. They put him in a place where nobody has any reaction to Kirk's death. They do react to his death on board the B. Now you do have Scotty and Chekhov. Oh my God, when Chekhov comes out and he says, "Oh my God, nobody was in here," and Scotty's like, "Yes." Okay, that had meaning, but the new one did not. I mean, the second death did not.
They did set up a theme with dying alone. That's true. Alan Burton mentions he knew he would die alone. They did set that up. So there was a little setup and payoff on that, but
that came from a different movie too.
Well, didn't he say it in this?
Oh, did he say it again here
at
too?
one point?
He was Star Trek 5. He said, "I would die." What didn't I knew I would die alone come from Star Trek 5?
I think it's there, but I also think that didn't he say it once in the log cabin? I thought he said it once in the log cabin that he would die alone. But still, people still cared about Kirk. He was very relevant to Starfleet. Think about Spock's death. Spock dies saving the ship, right? We have Scotty on the bagpipes. We have everyone lined up on both sides of the torpedo bay. Saavik, the Vulcan, she's Vulcan, in tears. Everyone's crying for Spock. And they launch Spock out. A sun rises up behind the planet Genesis. Kirk quotes T.H. Lawrence, or not T.H. Lawrence, a far better resting place than I have ever known. He's quoting people. So, and it ties into the theme of feeling young. And then Kirk dies by falling, and there's no ceremony. There's no eulogy.
He could have died alone. That would be fine. But then give him a funeral.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Like, you could still have a eulogy for, like, Kirk. There's not every Star Trek fan that I've ever met and around the world remembers Kirk's eulogy for Spock. He's giving a speech. He's trying to hold it together like a man. He's not like, Spock, oh God. He's trying to hold it together. He's trying to keep his cool. And near the end of his eulogy, he buckles a little bit. He starts to lose his emotional cool. And that's what sells it the most. That's when Saavik looks away. They feel for him. It's such a dramatic moment. It has such gravity. It's one of the heaviest gravity moments in the Star Trek franchise. And here Kirk dies, and there's zero ceremony to it.
There's zero. Unbelievable. Everybody remembers Spock's death. Hey, if you're writing this, if you're paying attention at all, which maybe you're not, you're like, okay, wait a minute. I'm supposed to write the death of Captain Kirk. We've already been through the death of Spock. Man, I got to make the death of Captain Kirk an 11 then. Like, I got to pull some, and then they just don't.
They do nothing with it. So it's awful. Like this wasn't a good movie.
I didn't like it. I wasn't fond of that scene. So many peeps were saying it was a sad way to go as we watched in the theater. Yeah. Like this whole thing should have been scrapped. I mean, the fact that you end up with this script, it's rushed. It's just, it must have been rushed, like from the like, okay, we're going to a film franchise. Somebody get together some idea because we got to be filming 10 days after we close this TV show out. And it's just they told the studio we have 38. We can do this whole movie on 38 million. Shatner's agreed to come on. Patrick Stewart agreed to come on. We have the whole crew of the Next Generation available. We're going to reuse the sets. We're going to reuse footage from Star Trek 3. This is going to be a slam dunk.
That's how this movie got made.
So let me go over here and grab a couple of other chats that I starred as I was going by. BGD said, I think that the key to appreciating Star Trek cinema, Star Trek The Next Generation cinema, is to not compare it to Star Trek The Motion Picture through 6. Generations, for all its faults and triumphs, is its own animal. The unfortunate killing off of Kirk had meta meaning. In truth, I think the theme of Generations is a pale shadow of the theme of Hamlet. It's a lesser thing to find comfort in seclusion than risk calamity and take action to make a difference. That is a lesser thing to find comfort in seclusion than to risk calamity and take action to make a difference.
Well, but Kirk has always been a man of action. Now, that said, Kirk being a man of action, having lived his usefulness as he came to that conclusion in Star Trek 6, the idea was that this was a new world, in Star Trek 6. And he had done his bit for King and Country. And if that character, this man of action, decides to then live in seclusion, I can buy that. But the themes you're talking about may have been there almost incidentally. But I think if the writer's job is to identify the theme, and then you find the moments where that theme is dealt with, and you augment those scenes and drive those points home through dialogue, through action, through a scenario that hits the theme. And I don't think this movie really did that at all. And they did not make Kirk's seclusion look attractive to me. It looked lonely and kind of like that artificial dream scenario that no one really wants. So I never bought any of it.
BGD also says, I think Generations made the error of treating normies and hardcore Trekkies in the same manner, with the unfortunate choice of relegating key points in character backstory development to exposition.
Well, I agree. He mentioned that when we were talking about the Klingon sisters, or no, when we were talking,
I think we were talking about the death of the nephew and brother.
Yeah, exactly. Where I was like, I didn't remember that connection like y'all might have, but it's not. You're supposed to provide enough context for people to enjoy and watch and feel the movie without the background information. This is supposed to be a standalone film. So that's what that comment was in reference to. Yeah. That's what we were talking about.
James says, we have spoken about this not long ago. Raise the stakes, not the scope. I'm working on a short story when I get back to writing. I've been working on a short story where I am trying to come up with something that is really insignificant in the overall grand scheme of things, but is extremely significant to the main character. So to wrap the emotions of the main character up in this, right. So that when this happens, it's the world to that person. So I'm trying that deliberately with this story right here, that the scope of the story, even though the stakes as far as like the world goes are very small. We're not blowing up planets here, but it's the world to one character. And
right, it's high stakes to the character.
It's high stakes to that character.
I think that's great, Heath. That sounds like a great test or a fictional scenario even to try to pull off.
Let's see. Well, I guess I wasn't able to. Kirk has always been a man of action, but he was failing to be true to that by going to hide in the Nexus. I admit it's poorly handled, but I think the theme was there. We could have developed that more too. I mean, yes, because the selfishness. Kirk does say, like, I think the galaxy owes me one now. And so that it would not be an unreasonable way to feel.
Shatner was actually pretty likable in this film. I liked the Kirk scenes. I thought, he looked good. It wasn't like the actor was too old. He shouldn't have been in the movie or something. Like, he looked good. Like, he was charming. He had some good lines. I thought that he was I thought Patrick Stewart was very good as well. I just did not think that they made their, like BGD's talking about some of the themes. I just felt that they were weakly developed, and the setup and payoffs weren't at the caliber that we've seen in other films that we've discussed.
Well, I think, Doug, we've done something amazing, and that's talk about a movie in about the same amount of time as the actual runtime of the movie, instead of like 3 times the runtime.
What?
So that was all I had on Generations. If there's anything else that people need to say, we can talk about it. I was trying to wrap up the comments and things because that's really all I had on it.
My only other comment is the cat's name was Spot. That bothered me too.
That is also a drawback to the cat's name is Spot in the Next Generation.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yes, it's a weird name, but
that's like a dog's name, and it's like the most generic. Like if you're like, oh yeah, see Spot run, it's like the most generic dog name you could come up with. I don't know. To me, you have an opportunity to name the cat some, like when Doc Brown names his dog Einstein, and then when he goes back in time, his name is Copernicus. Like, I don't know. You're doing a little world building with the name of those pets. Spot.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, that was a joke throughout the Next Generation. But again, they don't give you emotion to the ship. They try to give you emotion at that scene, the ending scene here. They try to give you emotion with Spot, because this is also Data's emotion thing that's going through here. But you never, in this movie, you never see Spot in the beginning. It's not like you know that, oh, Data's got this cat that he loves. If you didn't know that, if you hadn't watched The Next Generation, this is a payoff with no setup.
Exactly.
That in this movie, like so many things that we've been talking about with the backstory, you should have seen Spot in this movie with Data, and then have the loss, and then, oh my God, here he is. That would have been something that you
well, you talk about an emotion chip, show him interacting with a pet a little bit more.
Pet, right? Yeah, and make it significant. Picard's fish doesn't make it out. We already checked that. The aquarium is broken. So Picard doesn't even say anything about his fish.
Oh my God. 2 deaths that were unacknowledged.
So we did lose the fish.
Well, then there was some consequences in this film.
All right. Well, to First Contact?
Yeah. So First Contact is another. Now, this one is all Next Generation. And to my knowledge, this is the first film that's all Next Generation, right?
That's correct. Yes. So here we are doing what should have been done in Generations, is let's just open with the Next Generation and go, and let's start a franchise.
Right. Now, this time travel plot line was a little bit better than Generations. However, once again, if the Borg has this sort of technology, why not fire off like 9 of these things instead of just 1, and make sure that this works? Like, it seems like infinite lives. Once again, they don't really it's not like in Star Trek 4 where there's a procedure, and there's warp thrusters and all this other stuff. They just have this technology all of a sudden. They come into the Starfleet zone, and they allow themselves to be blown up as long as they deliver this device that can warp back in time. So you could do this anytime you want. And if you fail, do it again. I mean, who cares? So although it's better than Generations, it's not it's adequate enough to make the plot happen, but it's not adequate to really think about it much beyond that.
To me, it's a terrible time travel story. It's a terrible, you can skip Generations. Oh, you can skip all the Next Generation movies, I think. But so First Contact came out in 1996. This is going to be okay. We're all about the Next Generation now. They're going to get a new ship. We're going to do the sets. We're going to start this show, and the big billing in here is, of course, that we're going to see the Borg. Everybody wanted to see the Borg as a movie, and so
we got it.
I remember going and seeing this one in theaters as well. After being disappointed with Generations, it was like, all right, it's the Borg. That's what everybody was talking about. Let's do a Borg movie. And so that's why everybody came to this, because they were excited about the Borg. And then it ruins I think it ruins the Borg. So I know a lot of people say this is the best Next Generation Next Generation movie. And I agree, this is the best of the Next Generation movies. But I have been very critical about this movie, even coming out of the theater when I first saw it. I didn't think that it was a great movie. I understand, especially if you're a non-Star Trek person, why this one's got action. We're shooting things. We got the cool new look of the Borg. Why people like it for that reason. But I've got a lot of critiques.
Well, I liked it. So I remember I watched it. I didn't get mad about it when I saw it, and I did like I bought it on DVD. I bought it on Blu-ray. So like it was one of the Star Trek films I continued to have in my collection, and I would watch it every now and then. The older I got, the cheaper it looked, and the harder it was to enjoy. So it did not age well. I'll say that. Not that it was big budget at the time. It was low budget even then, but it doesn't age well. Like, it looks pretty cheap. Not as bad as Generations. God, geez, Generations. But this one has a lot of things about it that weren't very good either. In fact, when I was watching it for this stream, it's on, I think it was on 4K on Paramount Plus. When the Borg falls over in a couple scenes, you could see like spandex and like wire designs on spandex. And I was like, oh, I wish I didn't see that. So like it makes it look even worse as the quality of the film improves. The cheapness actually gets worse, not better. So I think what I liked about it was I didn't question the time travel thing that much when I first saw it. So to me, it was like a plot device that launched the story. The Earth gets assimilated by the Borg is the idea, and they kind of get sucked in just enough to be able to stop this from happening and allow the history to allow first contact to happen. I love the idea of first contact as part of Star Trek lore being put into a film. I really do like that. I like the idea of the hero worship. You get to go back in time and see this great character. What I thought was weird even when I was younger was how the crew is not concerned about telling this character his history. You are going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're amazing. Everyone knows who you are. He becomes like the celebrity when he's like this drunk. So I was like, whoa, they are not worried about interfering with history here, which was like a cardinal rule in time travel stories. You don't want to disrupt anything major, much less tell a character his eventual achievements. So that I thought was off. I liked the crew in this. I liked the characters in this, and I really liked the idea of the Borg taking over the Enterprise. I liked the idea of the Borg coming into Earth orbit or into the solar system and all hands on deck. I liked the idea of that, although the execution was not very good. I did like, hold on, there was another part I liked a lot. Oh, I really liked when Picard touches the missile ship and he explains to Data the idea that when you touch something, you connect to it. I thought that was pretty cool in terms of like a moment where you see a historical thing in real life and you just want to touch it and Data wants to understand what that's about. I thought that was cool. So there was a lot that I liked about it. The execution was off in a lot of cases. There was a sort of zombie-like impact that the Borg had on board the Enterprise, I feel.
Yeah, vampire-like zombie Borg. Yeah.
Yes, which I thought was somewhat effective. The idea that they started on this one deck, that they moved up. My issue was they never really explained how the Borg got on the Enterprise. I know. Just like that, it's now a meme. Somehow Palpatine returned.
That's exactly what I wrote in my notes. They Palpatined the Borg. They do a lot of this. They completely Palpatine the Borg. They do a lot of explanation, just like characters telling you things. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But one of the things they just tell you, isn't it Picard who says, somehow they beamed aboard undetected.
Exactly.
So they Palpatined the Borg.
In fact, I think he said, somehow they must have. I mean, that's two uncertainty modifiers. Somehow they must have beamed aboard. So like it's like a double guess on what must have happened.
That's like that line again sounds like something that you'd write in like on the first draft, because we got to think about that and come back to it later. And you're like, no, it's fine. Just somehow they must have done that.
Well, and what's weird is he says they must have beamed aboard that device, which the Borg launches from that like special launch tube, is designed to go back in time and drop off some Borg on Earth. You would not build a transporter in there. The utility of this device, of this craft, would not need transporters. You're launching it to a planet that does not have that level of technology yet. So you're going to crash land on this planet, you're going to get out, and you're going to start assimilating it. So it was just odd that this thing would have transporters in it. Like the Borg are going to activate transporters. What?
Yeah, you're right. They're supposed to get there. Yeah, and start the assimilation process. If you just landed, if they start blowing up to blowing up a bombardment of the missile silo. But yeah, they've got to eventually go down there and start assimilating people. But okay. So first of all, when I went back to watch this movie, the opening music I don't like. The opening music is terrible.
It's an overture again, yeah.
And of all of the different times when I start a Star Trek movie and it hits you with the music, we talk a lot about how the music and what this one I had completely forgotten about. And so it has no emotional impact on me or whatever. It surprised me that they don't do their theme. They put the Next Generation theme at the end, but you would think if this is the one that's going to finally launch this movie franchise with the Next Generation, you'd want to open this up with boom, Next Generation music, the march, the orchestra, here we go. And I don't even know what it was that was doing the credits of this.
Well, so I'm a soundtrack guy. Like I can't show you, but I have records. I have a massive playlist of my favorite music from soundtracks. Thousands of separate tracks. And I have only one track from First Contact. And I think it's the main title just because it has the theme that makes me think of the movie or recognize it as being from the movie. There wasn't a single track in the soundtrack that stood. In fact, while I was watching it, there was a track that was playing that I was like, oh man, I don't remember this. This is actually good music. I hit Soundhound, not there. So the one piece of music that I had to have never made it to the soundtrack. Yeah, there's one piece of music. It's when the Borg are starting to assimilate and the crew's going down to try to engage the Borg in the decks, in the hallway. There's a really cool theme, and it goes kind of back and forth between the crew and the Borg. And it was really good music. It was really dynamic, and yet it never made it on the soundtrack. So I can't even download this if I wanted.
To think about the movie from the large perspective is actually, even though, okay, we're getting the Borg here. Everybody's excited about that we're about to do Borg. But one of my fundamental problems with this movie is that we are dealing with an issue that has already been dealt with. Picard is trying to deal with the consequences of his assimilation. But a much better story about him doing about him dealing with his assimilation came in the Next Generation. We already dealt with this issue, and I thought in a much more sophisticated way. The episode I, Borg, where they capture the Borg, and he starts developing some individuality. He calls himself Hugh, and Geordi befriends him. That's an excellent episode, because in that episode, Picard is distant from that Borg, and they're going to use that Borg as a weapon to, they're going to put some type of, it was some type of geometric shape or something, but they were putting something into that Borg's mind that was going to cause a catastrophic, then return him to the Borg. And then when he was updated, and downloading what's in his mind back to the collective, they were going to implant that thing into his brain that was going to destroy the collective. They were going to destroy all of the Borgs. They were going to use this other Borg as a weapon. And Picard is all for it. And so they have the whole discussion on the ship. It's a great theme about this idea about the Picard dealing with the trauma of having been assimilated, what he's going to do back to the Borg. Guinan comes and talks about the ethics. Like, if you're going to use this Borg who's now developing individuality and has some level of personhood, if you're going to use him as a weapon to kill all of the Borg, right? They're talking about the genocide here.
Casual genocide
by Wild Barley, that you at least need to go down there and talk to him, right? So that's what Guinan tells him, to go and talk to Hugh, and Picard does, and ultimately he decides not to pull the trigger and use as a weapon. It's a fantastic episode.
Right.
So this deals with that. So I have a problem on a fundamental level with this movie that we've decided to go back, address something we've already addressed with this character. You don't know that if you're not a Star Trek The Next Generation fan. But if you are, which, I mean, this is a Star Trek movie, you're resetting the character of Captain Picard and to rerun the same struggle, and you're doing it in a much worse way. This one, he's screaming, shooting people up with a machine. It's Star Trek, the sophistication of dealing with this issue in the I, Borg with Hugh is so much better than dealing with an obsessed, psychotic Captain Picard who's going to shoot people up with machine guns. That's a fundamental critique of this movie to me.
I agree with that. The parts that one of the things I hated the most, and this is kind of getting into almost like a modern storytelling, the idea of the characters who lose emotional control. I'm not a fan of that. I like characters that can keep it cool under pressure. Grace under pressure. That's the mark of a hero. It's okay to be scared, but you do it anyway. Picard losing control, the way it was portrayed was not good. They show him lose, like you said, the Tommy gun scene, which was weird as it was. Tommy gun scene, he's like, and he goes to like beat him, and she's like, he's dead, like, hey, you cool it, bro. And then the scene where which is in a South Park episode, so it's been memed by South Park, where he's like, and he throws it through the window, and she's like, you broke your little ships. Did not appreciate that. I thought that's not really Picard acting like that. So, Picard's rather known for his ability to keep that cool head. As was Kirk. These guys were able to keep their cool enough to keep fighting, to stay in the fight. And like even Kirk that one time in Star Trek 3, when his son is killed, he falls off his seat. He's hit with grief, and then he gets up and we got a job to do. So Picard losing it like this, I thought was done for effect, not for they didn't earn that.
They did not, right? So I would have started with some better music. Sable Phoenix was saying that he likes it, but I would have started with a revised version. You can revise it, but with that theme, the Next Generation theme, I would have done the christening right here. So we're about to see the E. So I think I would have done the major music, have the opening, have the champagne flying through, and then have it break on the hull of the E, and have everybody talking about what an amazing ship this is. So I'm about to give a lot of examples of telling instead of showing.
Right.
One of my, especially in the opening 25 minutes of this movie, because one of the things that Geordi says at the conference is, this is the most advanced, most sophisticated ship in the fleet. He just tells you that. This is the most advanced ship in the fleet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what can it do? So why? What is this ship got that others don't? And then that needs to be something that's significant, that matters in the movie. And if you were doing the christening scene, then you could have had them actually explain, this ship, you're going out on this ship. It's got new weapons, better warp drive.
These shields change modulation.
These shields will actually change modulation if under attack. Yeah, that you would have had the ability to do that, and then that would have given me some type of connection to the E. Because the problem is I have no connection. When you first see this, some people like the design. I think James says he likes the design of the E. That's fine. But I have no emotional connection to the E. And nobody has any emotional connection to the E when you just start this movie. We have a brand new ship.
That's
looking
true.
Cool doesn't connect you to, and this is going to be a problem later on, that we don't have any emotional connection to the E. Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah, I've been told in one line, this is the most advanced ship in the fleet. But I don't know anything about it. I don't, I don't have the connection to the E, which is going to matter here. This movie starts also with a jump scare and a dream.
A double dream.
A double dream. Yeah. To me, that's a problem. If you want to start on action, I would start on action, but since the Borg are coming in, start with the Borg actually doing something, because you've got Borg activity in the beginning, but it's a dream and it doesn't matter. If you're going to start on action with Borg, actually show me how horrible the Borg are by showing them actually like taking out a Federation outpost or something like that. And then when they take out the Federation outpost, and then tell the newly christened Enterprise it's got to go into action immediately.
Right. In fact, so one of the notes I wrote was they could have cut out they had this whole thing where the Enterprise was assigned to study gaseous anomalies, comets. It's funny because, and this is usually a clue to a writer. So Picard is like, yeah, we found, 2 comets, and the dialogue itself is so mundane and stupid. And Riker's like, what are we doing out here, sir? And he's like, so they try to set up this dramatic moment. Scrap all that. Don't have Starfleet reassign them. I think you have a great idea to start with the christening. Use the opening from meaning as if Generations never existed.
As if Generations,
take that stupid opening,
as if,
or take that dumb movie and put the opening into this film. I think that's a good idea. Show the E being christened, and during the celebration, have the Borg attack Earth and have Picard maximum warp right then and there. Right then and there, because let's be honest, as far as a plot device, Starfleet doesn't trust their captain because of Locutus of Borg. That never comes back because Starfleet doesn't bar him from coming into combat. He ends up saving Worf's ship. It's a good thing that he's there. So
most advanced. They trust him enough to put him in command of the most advanced ship in the fleet. And if you're not going to use the most advanced ship in the fleet to fight the Borg, it must have been designed for Borg combat. The time, to counter Borg. I mean, you got to be thinking at that time if you're designing a new ship, what happens when the Borg? And so why would, if you had that concern, why would you give that ship to Picard anyway?
Totally. And my point is, there's no payoff to him not being involved in this battle. He doesn't have an argument with the Admiral. There's no you disobeyed orders. There's none of that. Right. It's just don't show up while we have this dramatic opening. Okay, show up. That's all this is.
Well, right. And I may note that again. Here's the one of the telling parts is that Riker comes in and Picard's Riker's like, why are we doing this? And Picard then says it's because they don't trust me.
Right.
So he just tells this situation. If you want more drama, now we decided not to go this way anyway, what we're talking about, right. But if you want more drama, then you have the Admiral tell Picard that. Put that conversation on screen. Have Picard make his case.
You stay out of it, Captain.
right there. Yeah, go back and forth right there. That would be much more emotional, and he would show the conversation rather than just being related the conversation. Again, more telling in this movie that, oh yeah, this is what happened. Show that. That sounds important. Show that.
Yeah. So I realized while we were talking about this right now, where I'm at with Star Trek First Contact. It's a guilty pleasure movie for me. I like watching it. I don't feel as critical toward it. Although everything you're saying, all of this criticism is absolutely justified. And I do have my criticisms of it, but it is kind of a guilty pleasure movie for me. I sit down, I watch it, and I just kind of like the crew in this. I like and one thing I want to point out, to my knowledge, this is the only movie I've ever heard of where people from the future go back in time to an era that's still in the future. That is kind of a new idea, right?
That's an interesting point.
Because usually they come back to our time. Kirk came back to 1984. Or was it 84? I think he said 80 or 86 or whatever. But when Picard in Generations, when they go back in time, it's eras that we've seen. This is an era we've never seen, but it's still far in the future. And I like that they gave it a little back. This happens right after World War III. So they establish in this movie that World War III did happen, and there's only 600 million people living on Earth. It's got no real defenses, and that's why the Borg picked it. So I kind of like that apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic future world that they go to. And it's a future, and I like the idea of the future going back in time, but you're still in the future. some of those things I liked. I don't get that anywhere else, you know?
Well, okay. So when you're saying I don't like the defying of the orders. I wouldn't set up the films that you have to have that.
I agree.
Because it seems very not Next Generation like. And in fact, especially coming off of a lot of movies where that's part of Kirk's character and Kirk is disobeying orders. This is hey, Retro Nerd Girl.
Retro,
welcome.
what's up?
Good to see you. The disobeying the orders is a very Kirk thing to do. And we've done a lot of
Correct.
movies like that. That's not a Next Generation Captain Picard thing to do. He needed his own character. And so there was no reason for him to disobey orders because he should have been just ordered and gotten there, as we've talked about. But it sounded very out of character to me that it was trying to make him a rebel like Kirk, like that character from the writing perspective. I'm about to disobey an order, blah, blah, blah. Let's go out of here. And even when Data turns around and says, like, you know, to hell with our orders or whatever that was.
Oh, yeah. I would tell them.
We're called. Yeah, we're called Spock. Like, you know, I would.
Spock says that, yeah.
Yeah. So it was, to me, it was like they were thinking, gee, that kind of style worked for that. Now let's bring that over and let's add that to this. And it's just, to me, it's not the Next Generation crew. Again, if you don't know that and you're just watching the movie because you're not in the Next Generation, then okay, fine. But if you know that, it's just not.
So let me say this. This is what I wish they would have done.
Data did do that with the blockade. Yes. But that was also, I think, handled awkwardly. That scene was handled awkwardly, I thought, but in the movie. But go ahead, in the TV show. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, so the way this all plays out, despite the crew sending away their most advanced starship while the Borg attack, despite all these things happening, the ultimate result is the Admiral's ship is destroyed, right? And Picard says a line that I get a thrill when I hear, I'm taking command of the fleet. I'm like, Picard's taking command of the fleet. That's awesome. What I would have liked.
Well, my
don't
question
have him
is,
go
can
out
he do
to,
that?
Huh? Well, I should get the Admiral's done. I think the idea is that he's the highest commanding officer left in Starfleet. What I would have liked is to see, maybe not him take control of the fleet necessarily, but I would like to see a Commodore Picard. I think a Commodore is when you take control of a group of ships. I would have loved to see Picard come in right away and call the ships up, the Lexington, this, have him come up and get into a battle formation and have him come in and tactically try to fight. Have him lose a couple ships and have him, swing around and come back around and then decide with that, everyone aim in this one spot and tell the other armada, the other flotillas out there to aim at this shot or aim at this spot too. I would have liked to see Picard in control of multiple ships where other captains are like obeying his order and they're all nervous and the Borg is hurting Starfleet and Picard's got to protect all these guys. That would have been cool. I liked when Picard took command of the fleet, even though it was kind of more in words. I liked that idea. And I would have loved to see more of that.
If he had been a Commodore, then yes, he would have had that authority. Because I would have been like, can you just show up and say that? Like, are you? But yes, he should have been a Commodore. I've long argued that after the assimilation, after the best of both worlds, Riker is promoted to captain. I think we've said this before, that Riker receives a field promotion to captain. And that's not being, acting captain, or, he's not made acting captain of the Enterprise. He's given a field promotion, which they only
would have been good.
That and a real promotion. I mean, it is a real promotion. Just the amount of ceremony involved. This is a battlefield promotion. You're now the captain. So Riker should have stayed captain. For some reason, he got demoted back down to, because it's an episodic TV show, but he got demoted back down to commander after the Borg incident. Let Riker continue to be a captain. He's earned it. And give a Commodore, have Picard become a Commodore. If you're not rushing, so that should have happened during the TV show. But if you're not trying to rush this into a film franchise that follows up immediately, like happened with Generations, if you're willing to let it breathe a little bit and you're going to start this franchise over with the E and the christening and things like that, you've got a gap then. Work with that gap and let Picard have been promoted to Commodore in the meantime. And then have Riker be captain of the Enterprise E. You would have been able to do that.
I love that.
If you had given a little bit of time. And now, and
you know what? Since they go back in time to the 2063 is when they go back in time to. their ranks don't mean anything in that setting. So it would be perfect to have them like Picard's Commodore Picard and Captain Riker. That would have been awesome. That would have been a little bit like Captain Sulu. You know, he was the captain the whole time through that movie, and he was great. So it'd be cool to see Captain Riker and Commodore Picard. Once you go back in time, we can reset. They're all kind of, you know, in disguise. There's no real, like, you don't lose anything.
But my issue here is Wild Barley says in a disaster response like this battle here, the first capable responder on site who can and does take charge in response to the incident is the incident commander until a crisis passed in a better management phase. Yeah, sure. But I'm fine with him showing up and leading, because he could have come on board and been like, all right, let him say, I've got a plan. Hey, communicate to all of the ships. I'm organizing this way. To me, the phrase "I'm taking command," like that has like legal implications,
right?
You know, like
right.
You know, like when Spock, after Kirk goes off to the Klingons in 6, Spock then says, "I'm assuming command of the Enterprise." So that's
note the time
thing, legal thing, right? And noting the time that this is happening. So because of that language, when Picard comes in and says, "I'm assuming command," like, it took me out of it because he uses that language, and it's like, wait, can he do that? He could use that language if he were a Commodore and coming in and saying, this is Commodore Picard, this person's out, I'm assuming command of the battle. Then using that language would work. In fact, you could get, like, Riker could be taking out the Enterprise E, but when you got this crisis, all of a sudden the Commodore comes on board the ship. Or
I love it.
You know, that would work so much better, especially if they knew the commander over there was like in danger or about to be dead. Riker is like the Enterprise could have been about to go out to respond without Picard. And then when he realizes that I'm going out there to take command of this battle.
I would have even liked to see some back and forth between ground control. You know, like what are the fleet admirals doing on Earth? Like, how are they coordinating this defense? No, like hear me out for a second.
Okay.
The Borg's coming in to attack Earth. This should result in the most tactical defensive response we've ever seen out of Starfleet. So show me that. Show me how ground command responds. What fleets are they calling in? Where are they pulling these ships from? How are these ships forming themselves to line of defense? Is there any surface to orbit response here? Is there a shield they can activate on Earth? Like, this should provoke the strongest response out of Starfleet in Star Trek history, an attack on Earth by the Borg. Because remember, when V'ger showed up, it was kind of a shock, and V'ger shut down Earth's defenses because of its superior sentience. The Borg is a little different. You know, they have a different tactical approach. They're assimilators. So I would have loved to see a more widespread, thought out, structured tactical response to this imminent existential threat. This is an existential threat to humanity. And I would like to see it treated that way tactically. You know what I'm saying?
I completely agree with you. I don't like the start of this movie. This movie lets me down with this opening 25 minutes because we're seeing the Borg on the big screen. This should be amazing. It should be everything that you're talking about on a movie budget. And there's so much telling. And like, they even just tell the Borg are coming. Like, that's how they're introduced. Like, it's just the language. You don't see it. I would have liked to have seen it. You're told the Borg is coming. And then the battle, which should be this amazing battle, is to me a huge letdown.
It is a letdown. The firing of torpedoes with the sound effects is video game. It's not cinematic. And just to piggyback on what we were saying, you could do certain things for very low budget. Have someone storm, Mr. President, we got to get you to a bunker. You know, we're on the Earth, we're under attack. You know, go to, DEFCON, whatever. Show governments being relocated. You know, you could do this very easily. You could do it with a quasi news report. You could show mobilizing of Earth defenses just in case if they break through Starfleet, which should never happen. If they break through Starfleet, we may have a ground invasion of Earth. You could do that with simple scenes in bunkers, in rooms with just monitors on them. Like, you don't have to spend a lot for these to get these scenes and these lines to show Earth panicking over this attack, and that Starfleet's your last line of defense, and they're losing. You know, I don't know.
I would have built the whole movie around this battle, because that's what people want to see, this ultimate battle.
Yes.
So the climax of this movie should have been this battle. Like, because we were talking about starting in action here. But Sable says, I get the idea of starting in mens rea, but I think this film would have been much better. We started out with some early warning, a sense of preparation, executing and exhaustively planning a tactical response. That's probably the movie I would have written. Then put this battle, give the battle everything that everybody wants it to be, and make it the climax of this movie.
I think one of the big flaws in modern movies and in certain movies in Hollywood is the inability to think tactically about what you're portraying on screen. It's a major flaw. Movies like Star Wars give us some tactical overview of what the heroes and heroic partners are up against. You're to proceed down the trench to this point. The target area is ray shielded, so you're going to have to use photon. This is tactical language. They're giving you an idea of what you're up against, and then you put them up against it. And then things go wrong. You know, he missed the first guy in the Rebels, missed the first shot. Empire Strikes Back does this. They give you an idea of a tactical approach of the walkers. Return of the Jedi does it. You know, you're to maneuver through the superstructure, knock out the main reactor, do this. Clone Wars does this all the time. That's one of the reasons Star Wars does so well. They give you a tactical overview of the scenario, and then they try to let you watch these characters play it out. Star Trek sometimes does it, and when they do it, they succeed very well. Star Trek 2 is great because it's very tactical. The cat and mouse, you know, there is the Mutara Nebula. Their shields would be useless. It's sauce for the goose. You know, they're on the other side. They show that tactical display where they're on one side of the planet, the Reliance on the other. You get visual, spatial understanding of what's happening, and I can't tell you what that does to an audience watching. You're part of the resistance. You're part of the attack. All missing in this. All missing. And they do something that makes no tactical sense by sending Picard and their most advanced ship to study comets while Earth is under attack. That, to me, says this is not a serious threat. It's all hands on deck when Earth's under attack by the Borg.
Right. Well, and I said, if the Enterprise isn't going to be there, then it needs a hell of a better reason. I mean, like it needs a much better reason.
That should not have been in the plot.
But it should have been scrapped also because it's a rerun of Best of Both Worlds, the plot of Best of Both Worlds, which is done much better. Now, the Enterprise is out dealing with stuff. The Enterprise is not at the Battle of Wolf 359 for very good reasons. I mean, you've been watching all this episode about what's going on. The Enterprise is trying to get to Wolf 359, but they're got warp problems, and because they've been dealing with the Borg and everything, and they're not there. And so this is an unfortunate rerun of that theme. The Enterprise is once again not going to be at the main battle. I would say, we can't do that again because I cannot rerun that plot point. This time we do the battle. The Enterprise needs to be there leading it.
Leading. Right. You know, it would have been cool too. I would love to see like an outer defense. Sorry, I'm kind of, my creative juices got going. I would have a guy literally position his ship right in front of the Borg in a "you shall not pass" moment, and his crew gets scared, and he tells them, "Don't hold on," and and the Borg just smashes through and just disintegrates the ship.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like have like this noble captain who is confident and just puts his ship in front of the Borg, and the Borg just steamrolls over him, and the ship disintegrates. Show desperate heroism on the part of the Starfleet officers. I want to see them under stress and doing those unexpected things that you do when you're desperate. I want to see that. I really do. To this day, I want to see that.
I like the depiction of the starships as like ships of the line from the Age of Sail. So that's like the way they fight, kind of lined up in the original series movies. We start to make a shift here to, I call it the fishbowl battle scenes. So like the ships are much more maneuverable. I mean, they're just flying all over the place.
Oh yeah.
So some people will like that style.
I don't like
you
it.
get more phaser blasts and stuff, but it's difficult to follow. Like you're just amazing, trying to amaze somebody by, oh my God, look at what's going on the screen. Blasters. I prefer the other style of combat. But that might make it easier for you to follow from a tactical perspective, because the fishbowl battle around a Borg ship doesn't tell you much.
Well, I think they got mixed up. I think they treated capital ships like dogfighting stunt fighters. Aircraft carriers don't do what an F-35 can do, and we don't expect them to. I don't want to see aircraft carriers doing this. I want to see aircraft carriers more or less fixed or moving slowly, while the smaller ships might do a little bit more of the maneuvering. But the big ships, they unleash devastating flurry, a barrage of phaser fire, torpedoes. They can move certain elevations, but they're slower. They treated these capital ships like they were X-wing fighters, and I think that's where, and someone said, I laughed at it. Wild Barley said it's very pew pew. Yeah. That's the part I think I hate the most, is the sound effects. You have these like stupid sound effects to the phasers. That's why I said it's more video game like than cinematic. I expect more from cinema, from your sound designers.
I thought the Defiant got too little respect. You got to have some reason for Worf to come in.
Sorry, I got to see Babylon 5.
Babylon 5.
It's been on my list forever, and I just haven't got to it. Right now, I'm going through Deep Space Nine, so I'm going to be locked in battle there for a while. But Babylon 5, it sounds like I just have to see this.
The Defiant was built to fight the Borg as the Borg response, right?
Right.
I'm not as all right. So we got it's awkward because we got to find some way for Worf to get back. If we're gonna have this movie, we got to put Worf back on the Enterprise, and he's over there with Deep Space Nine because he's on that show.
Right.
So he brings the Defiant over, which Cisco, I guess, is not going. It's just sent by Worf and other, I guess, no names from Deep Space Nine. So Worf is in command of the Defiant. And so I think it gets very little respect there. Like, this should have been its moment. We kind of mixed up on our story here because we got the Enterprise, and it's got to be the Enterprise's story. But on the other hand, from the Star Trek perspective, we got to get Worf back, and it does have the Defiant, and the Defiant's purpose is to fight the Borg. And it gets, I think it's handled with very little respect.
Ramming speed, which is the most brute, basic combat thing you would do with a ship.
It's taken out. You don't ever see it actually, giving any type of great advantage to this battle like you would want it to. You end up trying to ram, and then you just brush by it because, Worf does ask the Defiant, and Picard's like, disabled but salvageable, which is the perfect hand wave to, we're not worried about this anymore. It's been disabled, but don't worry, it's salvageable, so you will get it back for other TV shows.
Yeah.
And Worf, the important point is Worf's back on board.
Right. Now, again, guilty pleasure. They have the Klingon music with Worf, and someone just mentioned the poor helmsman. I don't know. This is why I have to classify this as a guilty pleasure. The helmsman's kind of this small guy, but he's manning his post. He's holding on. Worf says ramming speed, which is a suicidal order, and the helmsman stays at his post and appears to be carrying out this order. I kind of like this scene. You're right. From a plot perspective, you could pick it apart, and it doesn't hold up. But from my guilty pleasure perspective, I still liked it. I can't defend it beyond that.
For what we were all talking about, should have been the major set piece battle that you've always wanted it to be.
Yes.
The stupid target this location. Everybody target this location. And it blows up a whole Borg ship.
Sir, there's no vital systems there.
Is inexcusable to me. That is absolutely inexcusable part to this battle. Because if that's the point, what did Picard not tell the rest of Starfleet that that's the point on the Borg ship you're supposed to blow up? I mean, was he withholding that information? You would think that would be the first thing that would be out of Picard's mouth.
That's a good point.
Wait a minute. I know how, or even if I know, as soon as he's unassimilated, like, oh my God, I know where the weakness to the Borg vessels are. That it's an absurd thing. And even if he's being sent off, if he's got this knowledge, nope, you got to go, study that comet over there. Well, okay, I'll go study the comet. But by the way, you're going to want to know that here's the location that you want to shoot.
That's true. That's a good point.
That's inexcusable, in my opinion. It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
Well, it is like concentrate all your firepower on that Super Star Destroyer. There's kind of that thinking that you're just concentrating.
But if it's just
you're
any
right.
one point, then like nobody else thought of that.
No, that's true. That's true. That those are all great points. I never even thought about it that far. Like, how would you destroy the Borg cube? Some sort of bunker buster missile. It'd have to go something that goes in and blows up from the inside. A couple of those, maybe.
I think the quantum torpedoes were specifically developed for the combat the Borg, because now they don't fire photon torpedoes. They fire quantum torpedoes in this.
Quantum torpedoes.
Yeah. So, but like that would have been something that you would say that like this is the most advanced ship in the fleet. We're even carrying quantum torpedoes. The Borg killing missiles, or whatever that is. But yeah, he's got this psychic connection, right? Right. We don't see the regenerative ships. Man, that was scary. When I was watching the TV show back then, those days, you had the regeneration of the
oh
ship. Yeah. But so maybe that's attributed to this psychic connection that he's got here. But yeah, it's just.
Well, that is what it's attributed to.
Horrible writing. I thought it was horrible.
That is what it's attributed to. But I think what Heath's saying is, that being the case, he should tell somebody, what the psychic connection yields in terms of a total tactical compromise on the part of the Borg. If he knows one location that would destroy the Borg cube, that's a national security issue at this point.
Yeah. I don't see the point of the sphere.
Well, the sphere. I understood the point, but I don't understand why it's firing phasers, because at that point you don't need. I guess you go back in time and you shoot. Here's the thing. Here's what doesn't make sense. If you go back in time just to like provide artillery fire and kill Zephyr and Cochrane and prevent first contact, then you don't need transporters. You don't need Borg. You don't need any of that stuff. But they brought all that stuff back too.
Yeah, I mean, it could be it could be that the sphere is the thing that can travel through time, which maybe that's it. I'm just talking about from the story perspective. What we're watching here is we're watching the Borg, what used to be a really big, scary Borg cube, like ruining the Borg in the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, that they take out this Borg cube so easily. And then, it's blowing up and out goes the sphere. But you could have just had the cube go back in time. From the storytelling perspective, why do I need to go through the sphere to the cube to the sphere? Because the sphere is not going to last long either. Again, ruining the Borg to me. They shoot the Borg sphere. Oh my God, we got a Borg sphere. What's that like? Oh, I hit it with one torpedo and it blew up. The Borg sphere wasn't all that dangerous.
You know what? I think I would not have destroyed the Borg cube.
No,
I would have
have the cube go back.
Well, but even if I was going to use the sphere going back, have it go back with the Borg cube intact, meaning from this standpoint, even Starfleet with their best punches, we leave off in that battle and the cube is still standing. That's the Borg I want to see. That despite I would show it battered, right? Battered, maybe smoking, it's in danger, but it's still standing. It blows up. So that does take something away from the threat of the Borg.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
that was it started the movie off by taking away the threat from the Borg. It's even supposed to. It tells me later in this movie that the Borg are very threatening. But the only thing that we have seen, the two big encounters with the Borg that they put in the beginning of this movie, the destruction of a cube and the destruction of that sphere, made the Borg look very easy to take out.
Actually, the more I think about it, the more I would have spent 15 minutes or more on this opening battle sequence, because the more I think about it, the Borg has answers. The Borg evolves. It doesn't just come in with one plan and then you beat it. It comes in with a plan, and while you're fighting it, it adapts to your. So it does things. There's kind of a back and forth. The Borg is always responsive to the kind of fighting or damage it takes, and that really wasn't shown in this Borg cube attack. It was shown later with the Borg assimilating the Enterprise, that the Borg can adapt. It adapted. It does things, but it didn't show it in this big, large-scale battle. That should have been shown. So I think if you're gonna waste our time, or if you're gonna put it in the script that the Borg's attacking Earth, this is like Goliath fighting Goliath. I think you need to deliver on that. I think you got to show it. You got to show the Borg at its best. You got to show Starfleet at its best. And in order to do that, you got to think this thing out.
Yeah.
What are Starfleet's modes of attack and defense? What are the Borg's modes of attack and defense? And how does this look? And I think if you showed that and it was authentic on both sides, we might be talking about this with the love that we had for like Star Trek 6, Star Trek 2. You know, the large-scale Star Trek battle.
Right? Those movies set a standard, and this one is just not.
Yes.
I mean, they're not. We're not able to live up to that. There's more telling in this with the time travel. You're just sitting on the bridge, having characters tell you what's going on. Oh, they're traveling through time. Oh,
we're
they
in a temporal wake.
We're in which is lame. Like, what's going on? And that's like, oh, the temporal wake must have shielded us from the time effects, which is just a contrivance, and it's just told to you. A character needed to be active there. Like, oh, we're going through temporal whatever. We got this problem here. Wait a minute. Data needs to say, if we get in their wake, we may be able to shield ourselves from the temporal phasing and whatever, and go back and have them actually make that be a thing they've got to do. Because right now, for a while, they all just stand there on the bridge telling you things. We're in a temporal wake. They're going back and forth. They don't have any. It's completely happenstance and accidental that the Enterprise E is in that temporal wake. No character makes anything happen.
You could have Picard synchronize the Enterprise to the temporal configuration of that device. You could do something like that, maybe.
Yeah, have them do something active. Have them.
You're right. That is very passive. They're kind of accidentally sucked into the past along, in the wake.
Yeah, and then they destroy the sphere easily. Oh my God, they're going back in time. Boom. And that's Wild Barley says maybe it has to do with the shields. Neither would have shields coming out of the time tunnel. But they need to say that. Then have them say that.
Right. Exactly. Dialogue solves that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They just shoot at the sphere and it blows up, and there's just no drama in any of that.
So now that you say it, that's correct. You blew up the Borg cube and you blew up the Borg sphere. So you really reduced the impact of the Borg. However, the Borg, after they blow up the cube and the sphere, are very menacing to the crew of the Enterprise.
Right. And then I'm supposed to expect them to be menacing. Right. We Palpatine the Borg over to the Enterprise, and then
now they're scary.
Now they're supposed to be really scary.
Well, but I think in my opinion, they were relatively effective as these creatures that work quickly to assimilate you and kind of rewire all the devices and take over your crew. The zombie rule is in effect. Every crew member you lose is recruited to their side. Like, all that was okay. I thought that was okay. Not the effects. The effects don't hold up over time. In fact, it doesn't age well. Again,
I don't think. Because I think I would have made note of that, because I was like, man, they just shoot it and they blow it up. But because they talk about more exposition. When we Palpatine the Borg over, that's just like telling you something. Like, somebody goes, they knew their ship was doomed. Why? Like, why did they know their ship was doomed?
They shouldn't have.
Did they know their ship was doomed in the second and a half that one torpedo was flying over to them or something like that? Like, how did they know their ship was doomed? And so they organized this way to Palpatine themselves over here and orchestrate this new plan.
Couldn't have known that a Federation ship would accidentally end up in its temple.
Yeah, it's just it's just more in the first, especially half an hour of this movie. People just tell you what's going on, and you don't see anything. I don't even. But the Borg so we got the new look of the Borg. We upgrade the Borg's look, which is acceptable and expected for the movie. Okay, and of course they go to a lot of trouble to not show you a Borg drone until at a certain time, because they've got all the new look and they want to hold that off.
Yeah.
And of course, now we got like vampire Borg, but and they try to bring in a horror movie.
A little bit, yeah.
To this, they want to bring. We got like the zombie guys, the vampire-like zombie guys, and like they're beating on doors. Like that's a classic kind of horror thing that you see the door being beaten open or being beaten in and trying to be caved in. But I'm like, these are Borg. They don't have like a cutting tool. Why are Borg like
or just rewiring it to open it up?
Right. Yeah. It's just like, so it seemed like, okay, we got an idea here. Can we do horror with Star Trek? Well, maybe, but not like that.
Yeah, they could have done better. Again, for whatever reason, and I don't know if I understand why, I was very forgiving of this film. Like, as we talk, I could go pretty hard on the criticism, but I wasn't too bothered by, like, if I had to think about the things that bothered me, it was the cheapness of the sets. I hated the scenes where they showed the Borg point of view and everything was like, and they showed like Starfleet officers backing up and giving way. Like, they made it look like they just kept like hanging out in these hallways. There were several things I did not like that I thought erased the authenticity of it based on the low budget. I feel like the budget was missing and it looked a little too TV show like. But I still kind of liked the Borg taking over the Enterprise. Like, they had the funny kind of throwaway lines of, it's getting hot in here. Right. Have them check on the temperature. So they check, they're like, it's 39.1 degrees Celsius. And Picard's like, exactly what a Borg would be. Like, wouldn't everyone know this by now? Like, 39.1 degrees Celsius is like a problem. Like, I would set my thermostat to be like, if it ever ends up on this temperature, you sound the alarm. Like a car alarm.
See, this is another one of those things I know you're going to say that you forgive. And people do forgive because they want to see this. But when I was talking about this being very, I thought, not Next Generation like, it's, actually, before I bring up that point, let me something else that should have happened. How is the Enterprise going to get back?
You wait for the Borg to reinvent itself and create a new temporal wake.
Right, it's something like that.
Or you slingshot around the sun.
Yeah. Well, they could have slingshot around the sun, which they don't bring up. They just. Correct. I was always wondering, like, as I was watching this the first time, like, I remember, like, how do they get back? And I was completely unsatisfied with the end that Captain Picard was like, or Geordi was like, we've reconfigured the Enterprise for the time, whatever, like the Borg did. And then they just return at the end of this movie. And it's like, oh, so the Enterprise E now can just travel through time.
Yes.
Like, that's not an issue, apparently. Now, I guess you forget about that later on. Again.
No, like, that I'm not too forgiving of. You have to explain that.
Yeah, you have to explain that. So now you can still do it in a technobabble way. But if you have the characters actively getting into the temporal wake, like, we're going to try to go back, have them actively doing something there, go ahead and then also give a reason why you might be able to get back. Because like nobody even mentions that. We blow up the sphere. We're here in the middle of the 21st century. Nobody even mentions how do we get back.
It should be Riker. Because he's like, follow them through that temporal war. We have to find a way to stop what damage they've done. You're right. Someone should protest. And Riker fulfills that role as his job is to challenge the captain in these kind of issues.
So go ahead and do some technobabble here. Because, okay, we're going to want them to get back, but have something to do with passing through the temporal wake. Do something to the Enterprise's engines. Like, they're collecting, just call them like temporal crystals, crystalline temporal photons, or whatever. Just make up some technobabble that they can say those are because of this. Those have collected on our warp nacelles, but they're yeah. But they're dissipating. We can do X, Y, Z. We don't have the capacity to make these new temporal tachyon things, but they're attached to our nacelles because the Borg do. And so we can do X and Y to regenerate some kind of Borg field as long as those are on our nacelles.
You know what?
They're dissipating, and that's going to put a timer on the go back. So we've only got 3.5 hours before the temporal nacelles will have dissipated and we won't be able to get back. Then the crew will also have a timer for this entire mission.
Well, and now you got a side, not a bad side quest, a good side quest. You have another mission for certain crew members. Your job is to collect those tachyon crystals so that we can get back. Because if you don't, we're living in the 2063.
Right.
Our life is here. If you can't do that, you're right. There wasn't really a good address on the return trip, unless they had Mr. Fusion, and you could just put any old garbage in there. Back to the Future rules, Mr. Fusion. I need fuel.
I think, in terms of this not being very Next Generation like to me, it just ruins it. That the Next Generation crew is not a SWAT team. Like when the Next Generation crew are not.
You're talking about the zero gravity sequence.
Do you remember your zero gravity combat training? They turn, especially just in general, when they're all getting out the rifles and they're all holding the rifles around and walking around with swagger, looking like they're SEAL Team 6 or some type of mega SWAT team and stuff. And I get it. People like that for the reason that we're using phaser rifles to take out Borg and stuff like that. And that's fun. I get it. But just during all those scenes, I'm looking at it and going, this is not the Next Generation crew. That they turned them into action heroes and a SWAT team here, which is not what they were about.
No, they weren't about that.
The build team on the surface was the most direct part, yes.
Well, but I thought that it was at least semi-appropriate given the situation. Like, they didn't portray them like this throughout the film. It was kind of isolated to this one thing. It was a zero gravity situation, which I thought was okay. When they're with the gravity boots on the outside of the hull, I thought that was okay. I like the idea of the Borg trying to build some giant outer transmitter, and they had to disrupt that. I didn't mind that.
Well, that part's okay. I mean, it's okay. I'm talking about like a lot of the SWAT team moments inside the ship. Like if you had to go out and take care of the thing on the outside of the ship, it's kind of weird that you've got like how else are you supposed to be able to access that? It's kind of weird that the magnetic locks are. But I'll take that too. That you're gonna walk outside and have that scene. But yeah.
No, I'm with you. It's again, this is not a airtight. This does not meet the level of standards that I think you and I typically go to. I liked watching some of these things. I don't know why I haven't been as critical as you. And that's not. I don't mean that to be like condescending or anything. For whatever reason, I just kind of accepted a lot of this stuff. I don't know if it just caught me at the right time in my life or I wasn't worried about that. But First Contact got through a lot of these sort of critiques in my mind. While talking with you about them, though, they're valid critiques. Like nothing you've said is, in my opinion, nothing you've said is too nitpicky or over the top. Like these are valid criticisms all the way through. Every time I think about it, I'm like, man, I didn't get there. And I don't know why. So it must be that I just wasn't thinking as critically with, and that's why I think I classify this as a guilty pleasure. It's almost like I never bothered to question it and I just accepted it.
Well, I think that's the way that it is taken by a lot of people. And that seems to be when I was listening to other people's reviews of this movie online. It seems like a lot of people are very positive about it in general. Because it's got Borg. It is because it's not a fantastic movie, but people always say, "Oh, I like this movie." I think because it's action. It's not a cerebral Star Trek movie. It's got Borg in it. The Borg, you do get Borg battles. I think lame Borg battles, but you get the Borg battles. You get action, the SWAT team style action. You get a lot of that. So I think a lot of people run with it. I mean, that's why
I need you to join us. Your critical perspective will be added to our own, and before you know it, you will like First Contact. James, that's awesome.
Well,
it's the only explanation for why I like this. I have been assimilated.
The Borg Queen. I know that's already.
So now this is the introduction to the Borg Queen. By the way,
this is the introduction to the Borg Queen.
Now, by the way, I think her name. Alicia Craig, I think is the actress. I like the Borg Queen, specifically her performance. I think the actress, and it's weird. It's a weird performance because as robotic and as algorithmic as the Borg are, she's very sensual. She is very seductive in her performance. I like her. I like her performance. I like her as the Borg Queen. And I like some of the best parts of the Borg interaction with the crew is her and Data. In fact, when I looked at this structurally, the heroine of this story is Data, structurally, based on the circumstances that he finds himself in. Specifically, and the Borg Queen would be a masked Minotaur type archetype for Data. She is trying to seduce him. He is restrained. And, so there's all these elements just with Data and the Borg Queen. So the rest of the story is completely detached, by the way. But I like those sequences. One of my favorite lines between her and Data is when she scratches him and Data's like, ah! And she's like, why don't you rip it off and throw it away as you would a defective limb? And he's like, I don't want to. So I thought that was pretty cool. Data gets this sensation of like this small patch of humanity added. I thought that dialogue was fairly well. I thought she was very good. Her interaction with Data, and I thought the actress, in particular, her performance of the Borg Queen was pretty good. I liked her.
Yeah, I regardless of her, I'm completely on Sable's side that the Borg Queen was a mistake. This idea was a mistake. So we talked about how we already got off the bat rooting the Borg by blowing up the cube and then blowing up the sphere and not making them seem like the threat that they used to be. And then we add in this queen. The whole point of the Borg was that they were a decentralized consciousness. They were the annihilation of individuality. They were a pure collective, not a hierarchy. Turning them into insects was a deadly mistake. I completely agree. We finally got our Borg movie, and to me, it ruined the Borg.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. If the Borg's premise is decentralization, then you shouldn't have a queen.
You should not.
I agree with that.
It completely ruined the premise of the Borg. So I mean, this script would never. I would never have accepted this script. I'd be like, oh my god,
so,
for all these reasons.
So it sounds like to me. So I saw this movie without having seen the Next Generation episodes yet. So right when I saw this movie, I had not seen the Next Generation episodes. So to me, it was easy to accept the Borg as they were portrayed in this film. However, I have seen those episodes in retrospect. Like now I've seen them. And I'm realizing that you guys have seen this in chronological order. So you saw the Next Generation, and you're even saying things like this did not even strike me as the Next Generation crew in some of their behavior. So it sounds like you guys follow the Next Generation all the way through, and then here's this movie, and they kind of redid the Borg in a way that doesn't make sense. And there's a case there. There's a case there because it's not consistent with the TV show. But I think since I saw the movie first, I have not been as bothered by that. But if I saw the TV show first, I might be where you're at if I saw this chronologically.
Yeah. Because the idea that the Borg Queen was there, they Palpatine this as well, because Picard, there was no Borg Queen in the Best of Both Worlds and all of that during the show, and then they retro whatever her into the TV show by Picard saying, "Oh yeah, I remember you. You were there on the ship with me." No, she wasn't. There was no Borg Queen on that ship. What are you talking about? That was never something that was there. And then because that ship got destroyed and they Palpatine her. Picard's like, but that ship was destroyed. And she goes, oh, you think in such three-dimensional ways. The writers didn't even have a reason for that.
Yeah, that's a writing.
So they Palpatine her.
Jerry rig.
I love that Palpatine has become a verb. That may become a thing.
I love it. No, you're right. They Palpatined a bunch of things. Again, I think my connection with these scenes and with the movie was without having seen those other episodes first. So to me, I saw the movie. Now, I watched a lot of The Next Generation, but I watched it out of order and sporadically, and I never watched it chronologically. So, like I'm doing with Deep Space Nine right now. So, when I saw this movie, that's kind of my impression of the Borg. So when I went back, I was like, it was like watching Space Seed. And it was like, oh, Chekhov wasn't even there, in Space Seed, the original series. So it's like, to me, it was almost like, oh, here was the other premise that this was based on. And in my head, it wasn't a deal killer, because it was like those were the TV shows, but this was the movie. So to me, it didn't bother me as much. But to be fair to you guys, if I had invested myself chronologically through The Next Generation and saw this, I might have been frustrated. I may have rejected it. But as a movie, I liked the Borg Queen. I liked her seduction of Data, or her effort to seduce him. They had some good dialogue there. And I didn't feel that she disrupted the Borg in the film. But I can see what you're saying, that she does actually disrupt the Borg conceptually,
right?
As a whole.
This is not what most people, or maybe I would say, who had been following The Next Generation and were totally ready for the Borg to get on the big screen wanted. But you're right. But again, right, if you're just analyzing this movie, so I'm glad you have it from this perspective as well. If you just watch this movie, if you want to show somebody a Star Trek movie, this one's got phaser fire, it's got all of that. It does have her as a cool villain, Yes. And so if you're just analyzing this movie, then, or just sit down and watch this movie and go, oh, wasn't that cool? It is. But I get deeper problems with that. But
listen, I can appreciate your criticism. Thinking about it in chronology, in order, this would seem bizarre. And I can almost see what you're trying to say. Like, this was done for the normies, without consideration for like the lore that was established in The Next Generation, the actual shows. Because the shows don't have a Borg Queen. And I think what made the Borg scary in the shows was the fact that there was no way to really beat it because of that decentralization. That was part of the scare. So now that you have the Borg Queen, it does seem like if you kill the Queen, you kill the collective. Because I guess that's implied.
Right. And what Sable was saying, I forget to see where this comment was, but like that Borg are so alien because they're collective, you can't relate to them. But then she's very sensual, she's very emotional, she's very relatable. All of a sudden you have the Borg, not only do you have a Borg Queen, but you got a very relatable Borg Queen.
Well, I'll say this. I have seen other Borg Queen portrayals by other actresses. Not good. I think this actress did something that was very she wasn't like physically attractive. Like, she was Borg-like. Her skin looked like half decayed. But the actress still gave us this certain like feminine, like seductive quality to her. Which I think is very so maybe there's something to say about her portrayal of the Borg Queen that may save this role, or her introduction into it to normies, because I think she did a good job with her acting. I think there's something to say there with her.
This may be something that is too nitpicky, but I'm going to think about it from the perspective of if I ever have to write a scene like this, which I'm not planning on it because I don't plan on ever writing time travel. But it's becoming a bit cliche that when you tell somebody about that I'm from the future, they have no idea what you're talking about and are real confused. And so we give the explanations here, and I'm just and it's fine in this movie. But I was just thinking about myself, like if I were somebody needed to talk to me at the bar, come and meet me at the bar, and they said, okay, I'm from the future. Now, I might not believe them, like, because that's kind of like, but I wouldn't be like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean you're from the future? What is that even?
That's impossible.
Right? Yeah, that's impossible. I'm completely confused by this concept. No, I would understand what you're telling me. I might not believe you, but I wouldn't. So I just personally, if I ever have to write something like that, I'm not going to write a scene where the person is completely confused by the concept of someone being for someone else at a time.
That's a good. Yeah, if I'm at a bar and someone's like, "I'm from the future," I'd be like, "I believe you.
Okay.
You want to? What are you drinking? Next one's on me.
Or I don't believe you, but I'm not completely confused by the words you said. I do understand what you were trying to
What? If I was still single, that'd be a great pickup line. I'm from the future.
And
Come with me if you want to live.
I thought you were going to say, if you're at the bar, I'm from the future. And we don't have any money. So try to get the drink off of her.
We all we care about is the advancement of humanity. That's how morally superior we are.
All right. So do we want to talk about the holographic bullets killing the Borg? I know people already done that in the comments.
Yes. So obviously use real bullets. It would work.
Right. That's the weird point here. Yes. Okay. I disabled the safety devices so that, yes, the holographic bullet can kill. Okay. I got that. But so the movie also shows, as far as killing the Borg goes, that physical objects are a great way to kill Borg, because
get more of those.
Yeah. Why don't you replicate more Tommy guns?
Or just swords? I mean, just get something to impale these guys.
Right.
Don't shoot energy at them.
Right. Because Worf shows when they're out doing the zero-G battle, he's got the Klingon blade, and he's actually very effective at chopping up that Borg. They're slow. They're not dodging. He cuts off their hands and everything like that. And that's why. So first of all, replicate some 1911s or some Glocks or something and take these guys down. Do that. That's not explaining why you don't do that. But also later, when Picard is having his psychological problems and is like, tell the men to stand their ground, fight hand to hand if you have to, and they're like, what? But I was like,
that's a good order.
But I was actually, but wait a minute, fighting hand to hand has actually been demonstrated to be the most effective way to fight these guys. Put down the laser rifles that don't work, and let's go hand to hand and chop these guys up. I don't know. So
no, listen, I agree with you. Upon this watching in particular last night, I was bothered by the reliance on energy weapons against these guys. When you've created a ship like the Defiant, which is for the Borg. So the Borg is your enemy, right? They're part of the Starfleet conscious mind about this is the kind of enemy we might go up against. They can adapt to modulations on your energy weapons. You don't have an answer to this? A lesser tech so it sounds like lesser tech works on these guys. And that's always a cool concept to explore by itself. And it's been in many movies. Like Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, the low-tech Ewoks were still effective against the stormtroopers. Even if you don't like Ewoks, I'm just saying that was the theme there. You could do that. Star Trek 4, there might be a 20th century way. They still use nuclear power. So this idea of older weapons being effective against the future, you could use that. And obviously, if you know the Borg, if you're Starfleet, you understand how the Borg works, you should have some contingency weapons in case this happens. And and by the way, I don't even think you need to have like just grab I could find things here in my house that I could impale somebody with if I had to. Like if the Borg were taking over my house, I'll find something, Well,
Wild Barley and I had talked about this before, that you can solve any problem in physics if you just hit it hard enough, fast enough, guaranteed. That you can throw a lot of that your best weapon is often throwing a lot of kinetic energy at something. Like whether that's a Terminator or a Borg or something like that. But but Borg, if the Borg have been able to take over all these different planets, you would think they've encountered a bullet before. I mean, like I know what that is. I'm like, oh my God, the low tech, just somebody shooting a bullet at us. Like, and they have shields that can absorb physical objects, because if you shoot a torpedo is a physical object, and Borg would understand shielding for a torpedo. So I don't know. That needed more development. If it was going to go with the low tech route, then let's lean into that with the story like you're talking about.
Well, but Sable brings up a good point too. Part of what made the Borg so cool was that once they started to assimilate other humans, they would have anticipated that low tech response. Right. Because they know how humans think. So, but my point is, this is the battle you've chosen to show us: the Borg versus Starfleet. So we're going to have to play this out. You're going to have to shoot them the energy weapons. The Borg will adapt. The humans will think of using hard weapons, and they do, and it works. And then the Borg use human creativity to combat that. You're going to have to play this out. This is the story you've chosen to tell, right? So do that. Do that story. You're going to have the Borg solve. I like when the enemy responds. When you come up with a good idea, but the enemy figures out how to kind of black that off, and then they come up with a counterpunch. Those are your best stories. When the enemy adapts to you and you adapt to the enemy, and this process continues, those are the best stories. And the Borg is particularly scary because they're so good at doing that. So if you're going to tell the story, I think you got to do some of that. And you got to show it.
Let me give this is a smaller storytelling point before we get to the more meaty stuff at the end here. But like with that that scene where they're doing the zero gravity fighting, this bothered me the first time I watched it when I was a kid too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, this particular part of it. So this is an aspect of storytelling. Worf's suit is compromised. He fights that guy,
right?
And then, but in killing him, his suit is nicked, and then you get an alarm that says decompression in 45 seconds. So we put a counter on Worf that he's going to be in major trouble here, like probably die if something doesn't fix him in 45 seconds. But then as soon as after that scene, though, no one ever pays any attention to Worf. Like that, something that as a consequence of his scene, of his suit being nicked, some other character like Picard needed to make some kind of choice. Like, oh my God, do I actually solve the Borg problem by doing the magnetic thing, or do I, because I got a timer on the magnetic thing, the beacon thing, and now I got a timer on Worf, and now I'm Picard. Do I save Worf's life, or do I finish my mission and take care
yeah,
of
that would have been good.
Right. When something like that happens in a scene, you need to follow through with it. And so, but that timer started, nobody pays any attention to it at all. And then Worf shoots something at the end, like shoots the guy off Picard at the end, and he's standing there and he's tied the Borg like cable around his neck. So Worf was able to take care of that himself. There was no consequence of that. I think they were.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Well,
so it would strengthen it if there's a consequence to that. They tried to do something like, oh my God, we need to have something happen. Worf is going to have his suit torn, but it has no consequence in the scene.
Well, I would argue that it has the consequence never materialized because Worf reacted to it. He did respond to the problem, right?
Well, he responded to it, right? But you never see his response. Like you could see him, like I would see him.
Screen.
Yeah, it's off screen. He's completely gone, and then at the end you see, he solved that problem himself.
Okay,
it would have been better if another character had to make a choice, but it could have also been his choice, like something he's got to do.
Yeah, no, you're right. Off screen is always a problem. You made a great point when we were talking about Star Trek VI that Sulu arrives off screen. So I have a little bit of a beef with the off screen stuff myself. It depends on whether I pick it up or not. Maybe I don't notice it. Maybe they get away with it, but you can't do certain things off screen. So you're right. If you're going to put, it's called like Anton's or Chekhov's gun. You can't show something without showing the consequence of it later. So if you're going to show it, you should show them solve it on screen.
Yeah, because I remember as a kid being like, oh my God, 45 seconds till decompression. What's going on? And then you follow everybody else. You never see Worf again. But I was going, wait, what? Isn't Worf decompressing? Isn't Worf decompressing? And at the very end of that scene, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, he's fine.
Yeah, I got you. The off screen, I don't mind that he solved it, but I do think that you have a point that it's resolved off screen, and then it's kind of like, don't worry, we got it.
Don't worry, it was fine. That thing we were psyching you out about, and or that thing we brought up to you, just psych. It's actually fine.
Yeah, that countdown didn't matter.
It didn't matter. Okay. Here's a problem. Okay, we talked about the weird psychological part with Picard. But anyway, we go through all of that. But it's brought up because of this idea of we're going to blow up the ship. Here's the problem with this. I think this also has no emotional resonance at all. We're bringing up the idea of we're going to set up the auto destruct and blow up the ship. First of all, I think this is overused by now. Now, I think
it is.
I think it's the right idea here. Okay, we could blow up this ship. So I'm going to forgive it there. It's overused. So I think I would have tried to come up with something.
It's overused because of generations. One movie ago. Like, you can't keep doing this.
Right. So the idea of we're going to blow up the ship and it's overused. So I didn't get any type of emotional weight on this.
Correct.
The fact, but on a meta level, it doesn't work on the meta level because you're talking about we know the previous movie. If they were going to have to blow up the D, see, this you would have had more emotional weight if it had been the D that was going to be sacrificed the way. If the Borg were assimilating it, oh my God, if the Borg had been assimilating the D, man, I would have had a lot more emotional connection to, oh my God, what is happening to the D? And then if they were going to go, we're going to blow up the D in order to save ourselves and save all of humanity by taking out these Borg, that would have had so much more emotional connection, because I just said we're not emotionally connected to the E. If you blow it up, we just saw it found out about it the first time, an hour and a half ago. We're not emotionally connected to it. We know we'll get another ship because they don't seem emotionally connected to their ships when they blow up. So it's not like a big problem to me that like, oh my God, they're going to blow up the E. First of all, I'm like, oh, they're going to blow it up. It has an overused mechanic. Also, I don't care about this ship. But also, on a third meta level, I know that they're not going to do it because they blew up a starship in the previous movie. Then I just know they're not going to blow up the E because we blew up an Enterprise in the previous movie.
But all the more proof that we should never have had generations.
Another reason we should never have had generations. If you're going to do this, you needed to actually blow it up in something like being assimilated by the Borg. And because I was also not believing that Picard would not have blown up this ship, because he's like, he said something like, I consider the ship my home and whatever, and they're not going to take this ship from me. And I was like, you just got this ship. If he were talking about the D, I might believe it. I just did not believe a lot of things about Picard, like we were talking about, but I really did not believe that he is so emotionally invested in the Enterprise E that he's not going to destroy it to save all of humanity.
Right.
Just did not believe it. Did not believe it.
Right. I think you're 100% right on that point. He was not connected to the Enterprise E. He spent this mission on E and all of Next Generation on D. So he's emotionally invested in D. We're emotionally invested in D. Nobody has yet invested themselves in E at all.
I like that Sable says the Borg in TNG are macroscopic gray goo. That's a good point. So like the gray goo scenario, but they're they're macroscopic gray goo.
But that is a different type of threat, and I think that's where I'm trying to see eye to eye with you guys. Taking the Borg from Next Generation, the concept behind it, what makes them threatening and interesting and kind of like hypnotically scary. Like, oh my God, if they assimilate, they would have human creativity as part of their defense mechanism. That means our unpredictable response, which has always been a great thing in all the Star Trek movies, Kirk's unpredictability, this sort of out of the box thinking that humans can do, they assimilate that. So now they've got that too, and they can. That is scary in its own right.
They did that in Best of Both Worlds.
Exactly.
They have the plan to take them out, and then Riker, fire, let's do this. And it's completely ineffective. And he's like, Picard, Locutus is, says, don't worry, all the plans that he made, I've got now. So we were completely prepared for that. So
that's what made the Borg scary in the Next Generation. This was almost like movie Borg, not Borg. And movie Borg, I think, works in this one movie. It does not work as a continuous idea. I do think they're much more scary as a decentralized, assimilating force that you really can't beat. There's almost the sense of it's impossible to beat this. Whereas in this show, you could beat these guys.
Yeah. I talking about not minding messing up the timeline. I hate, and even as a kid, like when I first saw this, I hate that Riker and Geordi are on board the Phoenix spacecraft. I hate it.
Okay. Again, they got me when I accepted it, and it's been harder for me to let go of it. I like Magic Carpet Ride, so I like the music. But when I did watch it, I was like, that's like me. Here's what this is like. I go back in time and George Washington's about to cross the Delaware. And I'm like, hey, come here, Heath, let's go. We're going to cross. Go, George, let's go. Let's cross the Delaware. That's what that's like.
And then we return to our time and we actually see that like we're in the famous painting. Like, look, there we are.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm with George. Exactly. I was watching. I was like, what are you guys doing in there?
They should not.
You're just being tourists right now. That's all that was. They were being tourists in a historical event. I never questioned it because when I saw it, I just accepted it. But when I watched it last night, I was like, oh, these guys shouldn't be there.
They should not be there.
They should not be there. And what's funny is the part that I struggled with the most upon this rewatch is how much they were telling him about his future. Like, hey, there's going to be a statue of you over here. There's going to be I was like, that really breaks all conventions of time travel. Like, if you're not supposed to disturb time, you could, you might alter time by telling him all this information. So it's like
brought up in Star Trek before. I mean, that's
yes,
something that in Star Trek we know about. But yeah,
but you're right. They should not have been. That was tourism. 100%. That's all that was. They had no other purpose. It's not like Zefram Cochrane was like, hey, I need you guys for this part of this mission.
That and only they can do.
Right. Well, but even then, if he needed them for this, why didn't he need them in the real history? So I don't know. Unless they set up a character that was supposed to be his co-pilot who was killed.
It was killed. Right. Yeah.
And at that point, you could have Geordi or someone fill in. But it is kind of funny that they were having such a blast hanging out with this historical figure.
Wild Barley says Riker suddenly remembers he's a test pilot right when there's an open seat on the Phoenix. Yes, yeah. Because you could, I mean, I still would not have done it, but you should have set it up by saying, we know it's a 3-person craft. Like they could have been saying on the Enterprise, so Zefram Cochrane will be on board. It's a 3-person craft. History does not record who the other 2 pilots were. That would be a weird thing.
Go.
But you could
I
say
like
that. And then they find out that the 2 other critical crew members are dead, that they are the ones who died, and that we're going to have to make the choice to fill in. And so you could have done it, but I still would not have. But if you were going to have them on there, you needed actual reasons.
Actually, if I were to write this, I would not have had them on there.
Yeah, I would not have had them on there.
I don't think you have them on there, and I think the filmmaker had the magic carpet ride moment in his mind. You still see that's a baby boomer thing, man. They love their music and they want that in there. I think I would have skipped all that, or just have him play the music by himself.
Have him play it by himself. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I will say this, and I love this moment, regardless of whether it all matched. When those 2 nacelles pop out, click. I love that moment because for me, it was a bridge between the old world and the future Star Trek universe that we all love. this moment where those nacelles pop out of that ship from Zefram Cochrane, and he goes and it's first contact. The Vulcans spot the signature, the warp signature, and then they know what just happened on Earth. That plot line I do like. That's first contact. That's a pivotal moment. He even says at one point it's one of the most pivotal moments in human history. That I like.
So that's basically all of my notes. The 3D think in such 3D ways that actually comes after that line. We already talked about that line, and then talked about how do we get the Enterprise back. We actually needed a reason for them to be able to travel through time. But that's all of my notes here.
I will say I did not like the Lily character. She became kind of it's almost a cliche now, where you have a character who acts as the conscience of the lead character who is not a part of like she just comes out of nowhere, right? It's not like Spock or Bones or an established relationship where you have that kind of trust in someone giving you this kind of feedback. This is a character that comes out of nowhere and just like morally questions you, and and in order for them to make their point, the character like Picard has to act in a atypical manner.
Yep. Yeah. It's all of that.
In order for the other character to make their point.
She's moralizing. She serves those two roles, to moralize to the captain, but like Beverly Crusher should have done that. If actually Crusher probably, it could have been Troy, but Troy's down the planet. But actually, with the relationship that Picard and, I mean, he wouldn't be going through this arc if I wrote it anyway. But right. Crusher should have done that. Gone and talked to him. If you're going to have that scene, it should have been a character who he's got a pre-existing relationship with. Crusher should have done that. And she's also playing the role of the cliche that I was just talking about, the person who does not understand anything about the future. Oh my God, you're from the future? What do you mean? Oh my God. Oh, it's a ray gun. She's also playing that role.
Yeah. And I just don't think her character was effective. I know what they wanted out of her character, but I don't think she was effective. And I think that they had to do too much with the existing characters to behave inconsistently with their character in order to make those points. I did like the one scene with her that I liked was when he opened up the window and she sees Earth from orbit. I think there's a part of us that jump into her at that point and we're like, what would it be like to suddenly have seen this? Like if I was on a starship and I don't believe it. Like if I'm at that bar and someone's like, I'm from the future. And I'm like, okay, get this guy a drink. If I was suddenly on board and someone did that, there's a vicarious moment there that I think is kind of cool. That I liked. Other than that, I hated it. I hated also that those gold ships looked like gold models made of plastic.
They did look very plastic and cheap.
They did not look like they're. In fact, when I was watching it, my son was watching it with me and he goes, is that real gold? And I was like, I think the movie thinks it is, but it's not. it's gold plastic. It looks like gold plastic, which again, to me, the fact that it looks plastic makes the moment look less important. It makes it look like in the captain's quarter, you have gold plastic ships.
So I think it's like the conference room.
Yeah, but still,
it
should be it should be important decorum.
So when I left this movie, I was very disappointed. So that was all of a sudden two movies that we had gone through, Generations and then this one, that did not stick to me. I remember really, really wanting the Next Generation movie franchise to be amazing and to be have just as much of an impact on me as the original series movies did. And they swung and missed with Generations. And then as far as I was concerned, leaving the theater, they also missed with the Next Generation. The First Contact. I remember being very unhappy with it as a kid for a lot of the reasons still that I was talking about now.
Yeah.
So especially the continuity of characters and what this is and all of this. I think Wild Barley said in a text message that was like, it's like in D&D terms, it's like a one-shot Borg time travel episode. And so rather than
that's a good description.
Yeah, it is. So they instead of saying, okay, wait a minute, what made the original movies great? We're going to weave together this thread now. We're going to start. We screwed up with Generations, but now let's try to get something going here with a story arc and all of this. They ran Borg time travel one shot. And then that basically, to me, killed the movie franchise. Now,
well, I don't think it killed it.
Well, for me, I'm saying for me.
For you, okay.
For me, that really ended my interest in this was to me basically the end of loving Star Trek in that way. This movie, I did go see the next big billing was Romulans, and I love Romulans.
No, it was Insurrection. The next one was Insurrection.
The next one was Insurrection. Oh, that was completely forgettable to me. I thought Insurrection came after Nemesis. So Insurrection was next.
Insurrection was next. Double check me, but I'm pretty sure because Insurrection to me was the franchise killer for me. I thought that I thought that First Contact was serviceable and in some places very good. I, for whatever reason, did not have the strong critical reaction that you're having, but I realize why, because I had seen The Next Generation afterward, out of order. Like I said, I watched it out of order. I had not seen certain parts of it, so I accepted this movie without the kind of questions that you would have. But I'm realizing the kind of questions that you guys have, especially you, Heath, are very valid questions. And I have a feeling that had I seen this in order, I may have been tougher on First Contact. As it was, I saw it out of order. I wasn't as tough on First Contact. I found some enjoyment out of it. But when I saw Insurrection, I was like, this is so stupid and this is so bad and this is such a low budget. I'm done. And I think the next one was Nemesis,
Right.
which I never even saw.
Well, I think so. Yeah, Insurrection was 1998. I did have it out of order in my mind. Insurrection was 1998. I might not have even been to see that movie in the theater. I might have been done with it at that point and not seen Insurrection in the theater. I want to say I didn't watch that one until much later, and I forget that it exists. Earlier this today, I was having trouble remembering its name. I was like, there was another one, and okay, that was Insurrection. They got me back to the. I'm sorry.
Insurrection. That's all I said.
Yeah, Insurrection. Yeah. So they did get me back to the movie theater in 2002 for Nemesis because it was Romulans, and I love Romulans. And Romulans, I watch some of my favorite Next Generation episodes are Romulan centric.
Yes.
After the Borg, I wanted to see Romulans on the big screen. I was like, give me Romulans. And so Romulans were coming in Nemesis, and I was like, what? So I felt betrayed twice. I was like, I want to see the Borg on the big screen. They ruined the Borg. When they finally brought them to the big screen, they ruined the Borg on the big screen. And then I wanted to see Romulans, and then they ruined Romulans. They ruined Romulans on the big screen too. So it's so disappointing that this franchise has ended this way.
You know what's even worse about Insurrection was F. Murray Abraham was in that movie. He is an Academy Award-winning actor from the movie Amadeus, which is one of my all-time favorite films. Amadeus, all-time favorite, one of my all-time favorite films. It's brilliantly written. I've studied that movie a million times. And they had this actor in Insurrection. And so now I look at it, I'm like, oh, what a shame.
Oh, yeah.
What a shame that they put this guy in this movie, because I remember watching the movie at the theaters and being like, does this have like a $2 million budget? Because this looks like a home video. This looks like what me and my friends would make if I had access to a camcorder and all the actors from The Next Generation. I would do this. This is the kind of makeup work and cinematography and costume design that I would come up with nothing. So I was so upset with it. I saw it that one time. I never watched it again. When I saw that Star Trek Nemesis came out, I was like, not interested. And I think that's it, right? Was there one after that?
No, I think that is it. I think that's it.
What a waste.
I know.
What a waste of the now.
Absolute waste.
I have to say, and I know I've said it before, that's why I'm almost hesitating to repeat myself. Picard season 3 gave me the Next Generation I always wanted to see on the big screen. It's got the budget I should say the quality by today's standards that was lacking in the movies that I remember growing up with. So when I watched Picard season 3, I was like, wow, here's the Next Generation with a budget behind it, with good writing behind it. And it's my favorite Next Generation portrayal outside of several episodes in the original series. The movies never gave me a great Next Generation, but Picard season 3 did. So
that's going to be the last. There's no reason for us to do Insurrection or Nemesis.
No, not even worth it. It would be stupid to talk about it.
Right. So the probably what will conclude the Star Trek series and analysis is Picard season 3. So I'm going to watch that, and that will be our.
And you know what, Heath? It'll be a worthy conclusion to our discussion of Star Trek. Picard season 3 does so much right. And I'm actually shocked you haven't seen it yet. And I can't wait until you do.
Well, I didn't see it. I didn't see it because I was completely prepared for Picard. Like I was like, okay, we're getting back to something, man. And so I cleared my schedule like to watch Picard. I was like, which I don't often do, but I was like, all right, Picard, I am ready.
Yeah.
And I was completely underwhelmed by Picard in every way.
Yep.
And so didn't even watch season 2. And then when there was a season 3, just didn't watch either. I mean, season 1 just completely turned me off on the whole idea.
So I was exactly like you. I was like, oh my God, they're making a Picard, and Patrick Stewart is coming back. Oh my God, what a great gift! And it was terrible, right? It wasn't good. It was actually bad, and it didn't even feel like Picard. And then I checked out. I was like, God, they got me back, and I'm so mad. And then I heard Robert Myers Burnett talk about Picard season 3, and I thought he was nuts. I'll be honest. I thought he was nuts. He's like, Picard season 3 is actually really good. I was like, Picard season 3 is good. So I was like completely in doubt. And then I heard other people who are normally really terrible, like the negative group, saying positive things. And I was like, boy, if the negative group is even convinced. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch the first episode. So I watched it. I was like, okay, this is okay. Watch the next episode, and then I was sucked in. And I made it all the way to the end, and I was like, this is the best next generation. This is the next generation I never got. So I loved it. In fact, I can't wait to rewatch it.
All right. Well, we'll do it soon. That's high praise. So I'm ready. I want it.
You'll love it, man. They tie in some good stuff, man.
I was looking to see, I'd starred some people's comments on First Contact, and I just did in order to come back because we were moving on. I think we covered a lot. The First Contact is the Borg movie, which everyone got excited, and it's entertaining, but it leaves a mess in its wake. It does.
That's correct from a continuity point of view.
It absolutely does. Wild Barley had said it's clumsy. This is regarding Picard. It's clumsy mid-90s storytelling taking on PTSD as a character expression, and it just comes across as rage. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's regarding Picard's.
And by the way, rage from a story, as a writer, is a shortcut. Anytime you have characters just like, Rah! You're skipping the part that earned it, because people rarely act like that. People rarely freak out like that to that extent.
Especially a character like Picard. Like
exactly.
If it were Worf who did that, or like, okay, well, I got
Worf. Well, but Worf is a warrior character, right? Picard is a captain of Starfleet, and a captain of Starfleet is expected to maintain composure. And when they are moved, it's because the story drove them there. You can't give one line of dialogue that triggers this reaction. That's very lazy writing.
BGD says the visual design of the Enterprise E is supposed to communicate to the viewer the change in Federation philosophy away from exploration toward militarism and strategic defense. It's leaner and meaner. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like what consider in his Captain Picard in his captaincy career loses twice as many ships as the average captain does in a pretty short time frame. So he's an expensive best of the best. Yes.
Well, but that's what I mean by Star Trek Generations. A bird of prey from 80 years ago comes up and blows up the Enterprise D. You're demoted, buddy. Like you did something wrong.
Especially so you only fired one phaser blast during the entire exchange. I think Picard's strategic knowledge of the cube comes to him somewhat subconsciously. That may have been what they were trying to go for.
It is what they were trying to do.
Demonstrate the specter of his assimilation is still with him. But then you also needed to address that, because wouldn't some other character, like after that battle, after that's blown up, been like, so what was actually there? We thought that was no. So what actually caused that? And a character would inquire, like, because otherwise you're just left the audience wondering, why is that the secret spot? And why didn't Picard tell anybody else that? That should have been addressed. If that was it should have been addressed in dialogue.
So, by the way, and this is a rule that I learned from role playing. If your role players wouldn't accept this explanation, then your readers won't. So if I was doing a Star Trek adventure and Heath, you were one of the role players and I was the game master, and I said, one of the characters says, aim at this point and you'll blow it up. Would the role players accept this out of me as a DM? I don't think they would. So if they won't, then your readers won't. You have to have an answer for that, right? As a DM, you have to have an answer for effing everything. The player characters don't let you get off the hook. They don't just say, oh, okay, I get it. We're supposed to do this thing. No. When you're giving an adventure, they're very tough on you. So I guess I've come to expect that writers would do a good job too. So especially screenwriters, because you're putting it all out there. So I do think that you should have addressed that or come up with a better reason for this tactical move that Picard comes up with to destroy the Borg cube. I mean, we're talking about the destruction of the Borg cube with this tactic. And that's all we get. Like, aim for this spot.
Retro Nerd Girl says, I loved all the Borg Queen scenes, but I agree the Borg should not have queens. They abused the idea.
Yes.
And PH did say, yeah, doesn't Data think about joining the Borg for 1 nanosecond, right? Yeah, he does say that some fraction of a second, but that was an eternity.
I thought that was a good line.
Sable says, I would freaking love to roleplay in one of Doug's sessions.
Man, one of these days we got to talk about it because I used to love giving adventures. I would definitely try to, and I would have some sophisticated guys, and who knows, you guys seem pretty good. They won't let you get away with bad plots. If I come up with a bad plot, if I didn't think it through, it will show up immediately in role playing. The role players are usually very sophisticated and they're very good at probing for weaknesses in a plot line. So if you haven't thought it through, this is why I place such an emphasis on functionality. If your conflicts are functional, it actually does half of the work for you because the functionality of the conflict creates its own situations. If you're trying to come up with a plot and you haven't thought it through or it's not functional, role players will steamroll you. Oh, and man, you guys would be amazing. You guys would be amazing role players.
Well, all right. So does that basically wrap it up? Is that everything we need to say?
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't realize it till talking with you tonight, Heath, that the reason I like First Contact is because it's a guilty pleasure movie. It's a guilty pleasure movie. I don't think about it. I don't question it. I like it for what it tried to do. But the more I think about it and all the points you guys brought up tonight and some of the points you brought up directly certainly merit the criticism. I can't even defend it. So it's a guilty pleasure movie at this point. I got to classify it as that. Generations was not a guilty pleasure movie. I thought Generations was
a lack of pleasure movie.
It should not have been made.
It should not have been made.
I
was going to say, by the way, that Patrick Stewart, I think, was at his best in First Contact. From an acting perspective,
he was great.
He did very, very well. Now, he did very well in Generations, too. Patrick Stewart is a great actor. I thought he brought it, but I was especially noticing it in First Contact. And I was thinking, again, about what a waste it was to have Patrick Stewart at basically tip-top performance at what I thought, wasted in this movie script and stuff like that. Because he clearly can carry it and do amazing things. And we just didn't give this crew and him the material to work with.
I agree. I thought the acting was fairly good in. Actually, I think the acting was fairly good in First Contact, and I think the acting between Picard and Kirk was pretty good in Generations. I actually did not find much that I had a problem with them as actors, but the whole premise was so far off the base, so it was such a miss that it didn't matter. It was a wasted performance.
Yep. So we did it. James is shocked that we fit this 2 Trek films into a single stream. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, but we did it. But that's because of what the movies were and our lack of emotional attachment to them.
Well, and by the way, being critical of a Star Trek film means you still love Star Trek.
Well, right.
So that means these films did not live up to the standards that we feel it should have. And so we wanted to voice that too.
Yeah.
And
right.
Luckily, we've been able to voice so much praise for the films and the stories in the Star Trek universe that, when it comes time to criticize, we should be fair and criticize there too.
You're right. It also is important. It speaks volumes. It's important to say that even though we did not like these two films, or I didn't.
I like First Contact.
You said you like First Contact. I mean,
Yeah.
so the way, even though we didn't think these were great films, you did like it, but they didn't have the. But we still wanted to talk about them. They were still worth talking about, especially in my view, critiquing things that were done badly in these movies that had been done well previously in order to contrast, like the destruction of the ships and things like that. So these movies, I thought that's like I was still loving Star Trek. I was still a major Star Trek fan when these two films came out.
Absolutely.
So they were still part of loving Star Trek, even though I was let down by them. But then it also speaks volumes that beyond this, then it was beyond my caring, and I don't care. I don't even care enough about those movies to sit down and try to analyze them.
And that's a shame, and that's really that's a weakness in the studios that are making these stories. I think that a lot of studios make the mistake of thinking that superficial aspects of a franchise, like spaceships, lightsabers, photon torpedoes, Starfleet uniforms, all these the superficial aspects are what people like. And the fact is that is not what we like. We like good stories and the people that can add the outer, the good costumes, the good ship designs, good combat. You add that too with a good story, and you've got this. You've got a fan base that 30 years after the bad movies came out, we're willing to talk about it. Because
Retro Nerd Girl likes Generation. Retro Nerd Girl says, I have to check from the beginning what you guys said about Generations. I'd be interested to know what you think then. It's too,
she liked
too long to explain why I like Generations, but guilty pleasure for sure. So her guilty pleasure movie is Generations.
Interesting. I will say this, while watching it, I realized I didn't hate it. Like, I remember hating it when it came out. So when I was watching it, I was like, okay, most of my animosity came from the low budget, low effort aspects of the show. It was so low budget and so low effort that I was like, this should not have been made. And I couldn't make sense of the plot. But like I said, I like the acting, and I like Kirk, I like Picard. So now I'm curious to see her guilty pleasure case for it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Okay. All right. So please do like the stream if you are here. Also, please subscribe. If you're found us and you're not subscribed, please do like and subscribe. We'll be talking about Heroines on Thursday, an hour early, 6:00 p.m. Central Time on Thursday. Cameron will be here. We'll be talking about Heroines Labyrinth stuff.
And I'm just going to say, and I don't care about the money, if you would like to be part of the Faraway Bird discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Read the book. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on it. I really care about what you guys think. I would love to share this story with you guys and have this discussion. So if you get the chance and you think you can read this by next Tuesday, and it
looks like it's going to be next Tuesday. Yes.
Then please get the book. Please read it. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
There's an audiobook version too.
About the money.
There's an audiobook version, so you can listen to it.
Yes.
Also, too, audiobooks. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. Have a wonderful night, morning. I'll see everybody tomorrow. We'll see everybody live on Thursday for discussion.
Awesome.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Good night, everyone.